Hello everybody and welcome to Character Profile re-upload for Lloyd Mullany. This was taken originally from episode 6 of Conversation Street. I can't believe we did it quite so early.
I thought it was 7.
No, it was 6.
Okay.
It's definitely 6. I was having a look, I wanted to put Lloyd up this week because of the racism storyline that's just kicking off in normal Coronation Street at the moment, and it made me think back to the last time Corrie attempted something like this, or one of the last times, I can't remember, with the infamous Play the White Man story, which was memorable for all the wrong reasons. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, I was surprised quite how early in the life of the podcast we talked about Lloyd. And this was back in the day when our podcast episodes were, 30, 40 minutes max? So the character profiles themselves, barely anything. So what we'll play for in a minute is 8-9 minutes maybe of what we had to say about Lloyd up to what he was doing in 2012, and then we'll come back at the end of the profile and have a little bit of a chat about what he did in the 3 years, I think, between then and his departure from the programme.
Yeah, and I can't pronounce his surname.
Yes, look out for Gemma not being able to pronounce his surname at the beginning of this, but also me confirming that her mispronunciation was right.
Yeah, so we've learned. We've learned in the last...
We have. If there's one thing that this podcast has taught us in the last 8 years, it's how to pronounce Lloyd's surname. I can't pronounce everything, but I know how to say Mullany now.
Okay.
Here it is.
Now it's time for our character profile, and this week we're doing Lloyd Mullany.
Played
Is that how
by...
you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Played by Craig Charles, and the character was born in 1964. He lives in 15A Victoria Street, which is above streetcars. His first appearance was the 20th of June 2005, and he's sort of been in it on and off from
for various reasons.
Yeah, from 2005 to 2006, and then 2007 to 2011, and then from this year till the present. And he's been in 650 episodes.
Yeah, so the thing that I seem to have found about his character is the character was created for Craig Charles rather than let's make a character, who can we get to play it. It's almost like ITV got Craig Charles and what character can we make from him. I remember when he came into it and I was very, very happy because I was a big Red Dwarf fan, so having Craig Charles, who plays Lister in Red Dwarf, on Coronation Street, kind of a match made in heaven for me.
Would you say that he's quite a beloved... He wouldn't say he was a beloved actor because he's only really known for Red Dwarf.
That's it, yeah.
He's sort of an icon of British comedy, isn't he, really?
Yeah. And everyone likes him as a character. He's really popular, isn't he? Nobody's got a bad thing to say about Lloyd, really. He generally, in Corrie fandom, he's just a nice bloke. He's the kind of person that anyone would want to be mates with, I think. Good for a laugh.
Yeah, he's been... he hasn't really been the star of a storyline for most of his duration on the street.
No, he hasn't. He started off back in 2005 when he bought into streetcars for £15,000. His girlfriend had lent him the money, and he wanted to split up with her, but he kind of couldn't, so he ended up having to sleep with her, basically, to pay back for the money that she lent him. And that was a bit of a problem because he was kind of dating Kelly Crabtree at the same time. She found out that this was going on, put a bottle of laxative in his beer. Funny scene. But anyway, he then borrowed 10k from the bank, and they were an item for a little while.
I didn't know you could just borrow money from a bank. I thought you had to borrow off shady loan sharks or give birth to a child that's not your own to make money on Coronation Street.
Oh, there you go.
Or just get a job for a trial period.
In 2006, Lloyd and Kelly moved in together, and that's when Becky arrived on the scene, your favourite character.
Yay,
she was
Becky.
really clingy at the start. She came in because she'd known Kelly, and she moved in with them. Bit of a third wheel in the relationship, and in the end Lloyd suggested that she moved out. Becky didn't like that, and then she ended up planting some stolen goods on Kelly. That got her into trouble, and Lloyd told Kelly that she's better off pleading guilty to everyone and saying that she did steal it. Kelly did that, and so she got off lightly, but because Lloyd was going along with the fact that she was the one that stole this stuff, she ended up dumping him, slept with Steve, and that caused Steve and Lloyd to have one of their many fallouts, and that's when Craig Charles left the programme for the first time. And he left because the actor was suspended for drug abuse, and everyone was totally shocked. Do you remember when that came out in the news?
Yeah, it was actually very shocking that happened.
Yeah, I was gutted because I thought he was great having this childhood icon of mine on Coronation Street, but he was suspended, but everybody said, "Oh, I hope he comes back. I hope he comes back," because he was such a lovable character. So it wasn't long, 2007, he was back, and he was given a 3-year contract then from ITV. He started dating Jodie Morton, but then ended up dumping her because she had a bit too much baggage with all the many brothers and sisters that she had. He then, and he was. Do you remember Finley, who he got on with, the little Morton, Teresa Morton tried to con Lloyd into thinking that.
Yeah, I remember that now.
that he was his son. So
Poor
already,
old Lloyd.
It's almost a bit of an echo of the past. What's going on now? With him suddenly realizing he's got this son, but anyway, he finds out that he wasn't actually his father. Gets rid of Teresa, starts dating Liz, and that was another. We've mentioned that scene a few weeks ago where Liz had to hide behind Lloyd's sofa. That was
so
good.
that Steve didn't find them, because obviously Liz is Steve's mum, and it was a bit awkward.
Yeah, but he's got a thing for an older woman. This Lloyd, hasn't he? Liz,
well,
Teresa.
Mandy looks about the same age.
Mandy's about his age. She must be. He split up with Liz. I think he was a bit embarrassed by the big age gap there, and it wasn't very easy going out with his best mate's mum. And eventually, for whatever reason, he's ended up going out with Teresa. I think she'd been kicked out of her home, and he was on the rebound from Liz, and she needed someone to cry on, so they ended up together. That obviously didn't last. And then along came Cheryl, which was Cheryl, sorry, and that was his biggest storyline. For me, that's his most memorable storyline.
Yeah, he basically rescues Cheryl from her abusive husband, Chris.
Oh, he was such.
He was beating her up, and she had to get out of that situation, obviously, and she had a son, Russ. And during the tram crash, he
rescued Russ. Number 13 was on fire, and the Peacock children were in there, and he went in and rescued them.
Yeah.
He's quite brave. He rescued Becky from a fire once. I think a couple of times.
On the street, you have to be able to rescue people from burning buildings at a moment's notice.
They still haven't had that. Those fire alarms go faulty and set fire.
I think we've
there you go. There's another rescue for the future, maybe for Lloyd. Anyway, Chris has got is diagnosed with a brain tumor, and then he tricked Cheryl into thinking it was worse than it actually was. He's saying, "Oh, I'm dying. The treatment's not working," and so she goes back to him. I was so mad at him when the storyline was going on.
He was sneaky.
Because Cheryl was great for Lloyd. They were a really good couple.
I think she was a bit too young for him.
Oh, maybe, but it was nice to see him happy after going through all these unsuccessful
relationships. Yeah, but it was an uneasy relationship to watch, because you knew that something was going to happen, because she was out of his league. I thought, it sounds horrible to say, but I can see him settling down with Mandy. Mandy seems like a really nice maternal. That's what he needs, a maternal, nice, nesty kind of homemaker woman who will cook him a nice dinner. You know what I mean? That's what he needs, not somebody who's like sexy ex-stripper with an abusive husband kind of.
So anyway, she goes off with Chris again, and then before long Lloyd's trying to snog Stella. He's been through quite a few women on the street in a short time. Carl finds out, and Lloyd is kind of disgraced and leaves for the street, and that's when Craig Charles went to film the new series of Red Dwarf. Came back this year. And there was a bit of a funny storyline where he'd set up a rival cab firm with Steve, and then that was just a way of getting them back together again.
It was called Fair Ladies, which was an excellent name for a cab.
Excellent Corrie pun. They're good at punny business names. But I think Lloyd is great. He's I want him to stay in it a long time. I really want him to have a family. I want him to move in onto the street, because I think he could be an iconic Corrie character if they gave him the chance. He's not the best actor.
I love Craig Charles.
Yeah.
I like him in the programme, but I can't say that I've ever really cared about Lloyd.
It's because they haven't given him the opportunity. He's just been on the sidelines all the time. He's like there as the straight man for Steve's idiotic schemes, because Lloyd's obviously the better businessman out of the two.
I think he just always seems, in my mind, if I picture him, he always has a pained expression on his face for various reasons, which I'm sure are justified, but at the same time, he doesn't. When I see him, I don't go, "Oh, good."
I do.
It's a Lloyd scene.
I do.
No, I don't.
Yeah. But anyway, really looking forward to seeing how this other storyline turns out.
Yeah, I hope it.
I hope it spreads into other characters in the street, because he's only ever really has scenes with Steve in. He doesn't seem to be a part of the community. So I hope that something happens that he's involved with.
Well, didn't he start having a friendship with somebody he went off and played darts with?
Paul.
Yeah.
So he could get in there.
And there we go.
Very brief.
Yeah, that was a potted, brief, short history of Lloyd Mullany up until 2012, and a very abrupt cut-off as well. Like, I think back in the time when we had a certain amount of web space that we could only use each month, particularly in the first few months when we were just trying out the podcast. It's like, right, these character profiles can only be this amount of time. Wherever we are, we'll just stop talking and move on to the next thing. So we last left it talking about Paul, which is quite interesting. We were saying that we want Lloyd to have more friends other than Steve in the street. And how about this new guy, Paul, that he's just going to play darts with? How about that guy, Paul, Gemma?
Well, it didn't turn out too well, did it? He was Eileen's boyfriend, right?
Yes, he was Eileen's boyfriend. Yeah, he was the guy who was going out with the woman who had early onset Alzheimer's.
No, he was married to her.
He was married to her whilst he was going out with
dating
Eileen.
And he was just like, look, Eileen, you're my girlfriend now. Can you babysit my wife for me?
Yeah. So Lloyd made friends with Paul, but it all turned sour a little bit in, when was it? Was
first of all, 2012, he met up with Mandy Kamara.
I was going to talk about that first.
I know, but discovered that he had a daughter, Jenna.
Yes.
And Jenna ends up dating Sophie.
Yeah. Well, I think...
Then the next year, this is when we get the racist comment from Paul when they were playing darts together or something, and I can't even remember what play the white man is supposed to mean anymore, but it was
It's like, come on, mate, be fair.
Oh, okay.
That was a bullseye, or it would have been if I didn't have a hiccup beforehand. I don't know.
It was just baffling.
It was a bad attempt at a issues-based story related to racism.
If you want to pick a racist phrase or insult, there's loads of them.
There are. I think it was Coronation Street trying to say, well, we want to do a show programme about being racist, but without really using...
We don't want to offend people.
No, and it came across as being...
that nobody's heard of before.
Yeah, it came across as just being a bit baffling. They were early days, I suppose, in this Bailey storyline with Don at the moment, but so far it seems to be a little less heavy-handed. But yeah, so, we'd said in that
this
last...
whole thing was very twee, wasn't it?
Mm.
Because Paul gets accused of being racist by Lloyd. He didn't think he was being racist. He was like, oh, it's just a saying that everyone knows. And Lloyd's like, okay, you can't see why... you're a racist.
It was about casual racism, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then... So he gets fired from being a racist woman. But then he rescues Lloyd from racists later. So
I know, it was very, very
like,
twee, wasn't it?
There are different types of racists and all of them are different.
Be alert.
Be alert for racists.
It didn't work, and Paul wasn't that strong a character either, to be fair.
I felt sorry for Paul. He got thrown under the bus, I think, a bit. By
he really did,
didn't he?
And I think that might be the end of Paul's time on the street there or thereabouts. Anyway, Eileen dumped him, and that was the end of that. But at least this and the Mandy story, which you touched on just then, did answer our desires that we expressed in the character profile for Lloyd to get involved with some people outside of streetcars, and B, for him maybe to have a family. Although also the family aspect really, really didn't work with Mandy, did it?
They tried to give him an instant family.
They literally said it. They said, oh, and with Mandy and Lloyd discovers that he's got a daughter, Jenna. It's the old story of a soap star. A soap character realises that they fathered somebody and now they're all grown up and they don't have to deal with the whole nappies and schooling thing. And it's an instant family. And just, landing somebody
Jenna
with
was a grown adult with her own career and everything. Yeah,
landing somebody with that just it felt at the time really forced.
Yeah,
and Jenna was a pretty dull character, I remember. Mandy was okay, but I mean she's not last that much of an impression.
Yeah,
she was she did some cooking in the Rovers for a bit, didn't she, Mandy?
Yeah. So anyway,
she leaves Lloyd in 2013. I think that proved that he is better as a lone wolf. Or maybe it's just who he pairs up with, because
the next year he starts dating Andrea, and we love Andrea.
We did love Andrea. That was a lot of people didn't. She's definitely not a universally loved character, is she? But we really, really took to her.
Yeah.
Played by Hayley Madden, who had just come from Emmerdale, hadn't she? She's been doing some work on there.
She's just bubbly, like in real life, and in the show, she's just a big ball of energy and really always laughing. And I really liked her.
I thought they had great chemistry because
Yeah.
Lloyd was also a big bundle of fun, wasn't he? He was cool, but he was fun, and he liked having a laugh, and they played off each other really, really well.
Yeah, they really did. But turns out that she had a secret because she was married and her husband was in Nigeria, Neil.
Yeah, is he working on, I thought he was working on the oil rigs or something like that.
Well-
I can't remember, but Nigeria, apparently, according to what I looked up on Corriepedia this afternoon anyway, do they have oil rigs there?
Okay. Well, they break up, him and Andrea, but then Neil comes back and Lloyd can see that Andrea and Neil are not together anymore.
Yeah, because he started harassing them, didn't he?
He was hilarious. I don't know if it was intentional, but he's the one that sings menacingly from the radio.
He does. He
on the-
sings "Hold Again"
Yeah.
very menacingly to Andrew and Lloyd.
That was a classic. And then they end up on the roof.
He goes up to the Rover's roof to protest and wanting to get Andrea back, to try and convince her back to him. And then she climbs up there, ends up dangling from the roof. Again, a really Marmite Corrie scene. That lots of people point to that as being a real example of Stuart Blackburn ridiculousness. But I look back at all of
You
that
have
story
to
with pretty
accept
fond
a
memories.
small dose of ridiculousness in Coronation Street.
I thought it was really quite fun, and I just absolutely adored Andrea and
Yeah.
Lloyd. So yeah, they ended up staying together after that. He also had a heart attack that year. Interestingly, I think there must be something to do with working at Streetcars with Steve that gives you a heart attack, because hasn't Tim suffered the same
I think it's
affliction
just
recently?
sitting around eating biscuits all day long. It's probably not really good for your health. And Steve and Eileen are used to it, obviously, but the other lot...
Yeah, well, both of those
flies.
stories were other attempts at being issues based and like, get fit, Britain. Stop
Yeah,
sitting on your
that's
sofa
right.
watching Coronation Street. It's not our fault
Yeah.
that it's on six times a week. You spend 3
Waste
hours
your
watching
money.
this. Go and do a run.
Yeah.
Then in the end of 2014, that was when he left the show for a little bit to go on I'm a Celebrity, and that was really sad because that was when Craig Charles's brother died off screen. Didn't you remember? And he ended up leaving I'm a Celebrity part way through to come back from that.
Yeah, but he didn't die off screen, though, did he? He died in real life.
He died. Yeah, sorry, he died in real life. So Craig came back early, and then he was back in Coronation Street early 2015, where there was a funny story with Steve getting married to Michelle, I think it was, and after a drunken stag night, Lloyd ends up on a
yeah.
Norwegian trawler sailing away across the sea and doesn't come back for a month, misses the wedding.
Stupid.
And that was almost the end of Lloyd, really. He came back just to leave again.
Yeah, he broke up with Andrea because she sold one of his records, but then it turns out she's pregnant, so they decide, just like Billy Walker, to go to Jersey.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they go. They had two exits because
That was weird.
they left on the live episode, but then they came back afterwards to say goodbye again.
Yeah,
and
because
then
the live episode was all about the spectacle, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They had this big open-topped car, balloons.
and they were like
and
waving and
yeah.
riding down the street going, bye guys.
Yeah.
And the next episode like,
We're back.
do you know what we forgot to do? Like plan, pack, get
Well,
passports.
usually that doesn't make any difference
Exactly.
to Coronation Street's
It was just-
characters.
They were trying out being realistic and nobody really liked it, so they're like, right, next time somebody's leaving, they're just going and never coming back.
Well, I think it was because I don't know whether I'm remembering this rightly or not. Lloyd didn't get a chance for a proper goodbye with Steve as part of the live episode. It didn't really fit the
No,
narrative, so they had to have a
I don't-
goodbye for him.
But they didn't normally bother.
No, but it was nice
was
because they
nice.
made a really good double act.
I really liked Andrew. I was really mad when Lloyd left because Andrea had to leave because there was really nothing to keep her in the street.
I mean,
And
you
she
say
probably-
that, but I'm
Well,
sure they
you
could
know,
have found
plenty of-
something.
All right, okay, I agree.
That's the reasoning they gave, and I
Yeah.
remember at the time Hayley Tamadden being gutted that she had to leave. She obviously had to graciously do what she was told, but I think she would
like
have
Craig
liked to have
Charles.
stayed
Red Dwarf
on the
rah.
street. Yeah, well, Craig Charles wanted to do another series of Red Dwarf, and he ended up leaving after 946 episodes of Corrie, and he's
That
done
seems like loads,
two.
doesn't
It does, and you know what? It's really weird. Lloyd occupies a space in my brain where I can't quite believe he was ever a character still, despite the fact that he was nearly in 1,000 episodes. And I think it's down to me really liking Craig Charles and him being a bit of a childhood idol of mine and growing up watching Red Dwarf. And I still never could really believe that he was in Coronation Street. And I think throughout my time watching the show, a big portion of my brain was saying, that's Lister off Red Dwarf.
Yeah.
So I forget that he exists. And if so, whenever I see the stats or the episode counts or the fact that he was in 10 years or whatever, I go, really?
Well,
It feels Lloyd doesn't feel like a Coronation Street character. Is this just me?
Yeah.
He doesn't feel like he's a proper Coronation Street character, despite the fact that he was in 1,000 episodes.
Okay. Well,
Come back and prove me wrong, Lloyd.
come back and make it an even 1,000, I say.
Yeah, why not? I mean, he didn't leave in a coffin. It was a very positive end for the character. I loved that they had that big convertible exit. It was really kind of euphoric, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Even though they came back again. But it was a feel-good, positive ending. He wasn't like leaving with his tail between his legs. He hadn't been dumped or disgraced. Anything like that. He'd found his girlfriend was pregnant and he was moving to the Channel Islands to live a lovely new life with her. And then the next year we find out that she has given birth to a kid. So as far as we know, they're living it up down there, having a lovely old time. I'd really, really, really love them to come back, just because they were both fantastic. I've got nothing bad to say, really. I don't think about either of those characters, and I think of most characters on Coronation Street, even ones that I really, really love, I can say, yeah, I don't like this aspect of them, or that didn't work really well. And although the White Man story was a bit of a dud for Lloyd, that was more the story than the character. He was a really solid, great bloke, the sort of person that you'd want to be friends with, very reliable. He was heroic because he'd saved some people from burning buildings in his first stint as well, if you remember.
Yeah.
He was just a really, really top guy.
Top bloke.
I mean, I suppose the main stumbling block that could prevent him coming back was that as soon as he was gone from Coronation Street, Craig Charles ended up doing a couple of interviews where he spoke in less than glowing terms about his departure. And there was one particular interview in the Sunday Express where he'd said, I had to leave. For one thing, I wanted to do Red Dwarf, and the Corrie team had been very good at giving me opportunities to leave when I needed to in the past. Like when I think Dave did that first series of Red Dwarf. Dave the TV show, yeah. Channel, sorry. They let him go, but Coronation Street weren't apparently particularly keen on that becoming a regular thing. But then also he was talking in the Sunday Express about wanting the programme having a different idea about what sort of storylines they wanted to give the character, because he and Simon Gregson, who plays Steve, got on really, really well, and they had a great laugh together. And he said that they kind of envisioned themselves as being the next Stan Ogden, Eddie Yates kind of pairing, like
hapless duo.
Yeah, going from
bumbling fools.
Yeah, from one escapade to another. And although we saw a bit of that with them, he was being given these long lost family stories, the racism story, the brain tumor story with Chris and Cheryl, and that's not what he really wanted. And Coronation Street had other ideas, and he was talking at the time about Corrie being a bit too dark, and I think by the time he left, that was around about the time. I think it might have been just before Kate Oates came into it, but he just didn't like the way the direction that the programme was going, apparently. So I don't know whether, I haven't seen any recent interviews with him, whether he said he'd like to go in, but he's living it up DJing and everything at the moment, isn't he? So
he's having a time of his life.
Yeah, and Hayley Tamaddon has also gone on to do lots of great stuff. She's been on stage, she's done some other TV shows and everything. So
and prepared for the greatest role in life.
Motherhood,
yeah.
quite. So I don't think either of them have a burning desire or need to come back, but I wouldn't say it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'll be a very, very happy Coronation Street fan if it does, because I flipping love Lloyd.
Yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed him being in the show.
Yeah. So that is, I think that'll do.
Yeah.
We filled in the gaps there on Lloyd, like 8 years later. And now you know there is to know about him. If you've got anything you want to tell us about Lloyd, do write in and let us know. We'll be back on the weekend for our latest podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, we're at conversationstreet@gmail.com, but you can also find us on Twitter and Facebook and all that. And do give this YouTube video a like and a subscribe, because I believe that's what you're supposed to say in YouTube videos. Cheers, everyone. Ta-ra for now. Hello everyone, welcome to the character profile for episode 418 of Conversation Street. This week we're going to be talking about Vikram Desai.
Yes, this is Conversation Street. Coronation Street.
Just in case
podcast.
you accidentally clicked on the wrong podcast or YouTube video, that's what we are. Vikram Desai. I never knew whether we were ever going to end up doing a character profile of this guy, because for one thing, the Corriepedia article, there's not a whole lot on there, so I got a bit from Corriepedia, but I was also looking at some of the books that I had, and also Corrie.net used to have a really great I can't remember the word, a collection of old newspaper articles from about 1996, 7 to 2002 online, like archived there, and then they're not there anymore, but you can go on the Wayback Machine and look at them. So I was this week looking through and finding anything at all related to Vikram, so I've kind of been able to piece back together. It's great. I've been able to piece together what he got up to in his 4 years of the show. But yeah, I was never sure whether we were going to do it. I wouldn't ever say that. I mean, how much do you remember of Vikram? Because he came into the show in 1999 and left in 2002. So you'd have got a good year of watching him.
I don't have a great recollection, I'm afraid.
No, and I would say that he, despite nearly 4 years on the show, I wouldn't say that he left a massive impact. And I think that Chris himself, I've got quite a few interview bits from him later on, said that he didn't really have the best stories. Yet, despite not really making a huge mark on the show, he's absolutely memorable and not the sort of character I'd forget. And I think...
What a weird contradiction.
I know. I don't remember very much that he did, and the reason that we've chosen, well, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about him this week is because we spoke recently about Streetcars just celebrating its 20th anniversary, and he was one of the co-founders of that. So I suppose that is a mark that he's left on the street. But also, I chose him this week because of what Corrie started doing in tonight's episode with the racism storyline, and when Vikram came into the programme along with his dad Ravi and his sister Nita, there was a massive sort of hoo-ha in the press. Well, that makes it sound like a bad thing. A big
heralding.
Yeah, because they were Corrie's first Asian family on the show.
In 1999.
Yeah, it was a massive thing then, and it is quite funny how that was almost like, this is a turning point for Coronation Street. It's been, past 40 years, it's just been wall to wall white actors, and now finally it's caught up with the times, and it's been much more multicultural and everything. And we've got an Asian family. Yeah, it was only last year when the Baileys came into it. They were saying the same thing, weren't they? This is the first black family. So Coronation Street has really been taking baby steps in getting a wider...
a more diverse cast to represent the country.
So I think because that was such a big thing at the time, this family coming in, and I mean, at the end of the day, Nita and Ravi, they left even less of a mark and left pretty quickly, actually. For that reason... he was quite an important character, so that's why I say he's not the sort of character that I'd forget, even though looking back I couldn't remember before I did this very many of the storylines that he was in, and even reading about some of them I thought, I don't remember watching this, but I must have done. So if you're in the same boat as I was, dear listeners, and indeed Gemma may not have watched most of it at the time, hopefully this will be a bit of a refresher or a bit of a learning experience for you. And I did find an awesome little bit of facts about Chris Bisson and his audition. Or no?
Oh yeah, there's some good facts about Chris
I found some good trivia for him. So keep your eyes out for that. Gemma, I'll let you run down his bio before we get started.
So Vikram Desai was born on the 20th of February 1979. His father, you already mentioned, Ravi Desai. Sister Nita Desai. He first appeared on the 7th of February 1999. He last appeared on the 18th of December 2002. He was in 330 episodes, and as I said, played by Chris.
Bisson, yes. Who has made a bit bigger name for himself on Emmerdale now.
Yes.
I think he's been on Emmerdale for like over 10 years, and it's kind of funny because we obviously don't watch that, but sometimes we'll flick onto Coronation Street flick onto Emmerdale ready for Coronation Street to start. And it's like, oh, it's Vikram. Whenever I see him, it's like,
Vikram's doing all right for himself.
Yeah, because sometimes as well, you get these characters that are only in it for a couple of years, and you immediately forget them, or you see them in something years later, and it's like, I recognise that person from somewhere, but I don't remember. and that's not the case with Chris. You know, people like Dan Mason or Harry Flagg, these tiny little characters that just get forgotten apart from the most hardcore fans.
He was in 330 episodes.
Oh, I know. Anyway, so Chris first got into showbiz when he was spotted in a charity fashion show. And
Interesting fact.
Yes.
That's exactly the same way Kate Middleton got into the royal family.
Oh, yeah. If only things could have been different, Chris. Could we married to...
William. Why not?
Why not, indeed. So this is my best fact about Chris, and I don't want to, sell this little discussion about Vikram, and you can turn off listening now after you've heard the best bit. But this
is the best bit.
This is the best bit. So he first joined Coronation Street in 1999, but that wasn't the first role in Coronation Street that he auditioned for.
No, quite often this happens that an actor will be asked back for several parts in Coronation Street before they finally get the role that they are famous for in the show.
Yeah, that's always quite funny because you hear it like Joe Froggatt, who ended up playing Zoe Tattersall, thinks she auditioned for both Leanne and Toya Battersby, for example. It's not as uncommon as you might think. But back in the 80s, Chris Bisson, who... I don't know whether this is his first audition or what, but he...
well, he was an unemployed actor, wasn't he, before he got the show? He was looking for work, auditioning wherever he could. Yeah, no, but he was just he must have just been a kid at this time, because he went to audition for the role of Steve McDonald. Oh yes. Sorry, my drink went down the wrong way.
I got you to guess this the other day, didn't I? So Gemma, have a guess. It was in the 80s. Chris Bisson did an audition for the most unlikely part, and the part of the guy, you go, what? And you did guess it first time.
I guessed it first time because the only thing that would have been more implausible would have been Liz McDonald, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
His agent screwed up a little bit.
But yeah, basically, I mean, Chris has said, it was so stupid looking back, I was totally unsuitable. Yeah, I think if Charlie Lawson and Bev Callard had rocked up to the street with their son.
With twins.
Yeah.
One of whom was Chris.
Not identical.
So carry on the quake.
He said my agent was clueless. She's come under a bit of pressure trying to get me a job. Here I was with all these very white kids with blonde hair in this hall, and I knew I was in the wrong place.
It's funny.
That must have been so embarrassing.
I was going to say, it's funny to imagine, but imagine how bloody awful you would have felt if you were him, just going, oh, right, another part I can't actually play because it's a different race.
Yeah, I know, totally. I wonder whether he actually, went through and did the audition, or whether he just showed up and
I'm going.
I
mean, yeah, I would actually like to know that as well, because I think if I was a casting director and some agent brought this kid in who was not at all what you were looking for, but he still went ahead and gave it his best, you would sort of think, I'll write your name down.
I'll tell you what.
I've got something for you.
It was this audition that I think he was spotted by someone there, and it led to him to have a part on Children's Ward, which was a kids. It was a children's ITV show that I remember watching.
What was it about?
Hospital. I can't remember. There were some big names on that. I can't remember whether Alan Halston might have had a part in Children's Ward as well. I can't remember.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Was it about ill children in hospital?
Yeah, but they had lots of fun as well.
Kind of thing.
So he was in quite a bit of that, and he was also well known in 1999 for starring in the film East is East. That came out a bit after his time in Coronation Street, I think, but I guess he must have filmed it before Corrie. We've never seen East is East. I haven't seen it. Have you seen it?
I don't remember.
Apparently, I think it's got quite a cult following. I remember there was one series of Big Brother where they were demanding that Big Brother let them watch East is East. I don't know why. Yeah, Jimmy Mystery was also in that film as well. By the way, he went on to play Cal Nazir.
I know what our homework's going to be.
We've got to watch East is East now, have we? They made a sequel to it as well, like 20 years later.
West is West.
I think it is, actually.
Is it?
Yeah. So before he got the job in Coronation Street, he, as Gemma said, he was an unemployed actor working in Moss Bros in the West End, and he
That's
had a
where
bit.
you got your wedding outfit from.
Not the one in the West End, though.
No.
He had a bit of an Archie Shuttleworth-esque skill in that he could look at somebody and pick their size.
He won an award.
He did win a Moss Bros award, apparently. I don't know
Well
whether it was
done.
just like
What
they had a
is-
parade of people and like 5'7", 6'2",
You know what?
medium,
People-
extra large. Sorry, mate.
I know people, especially in America, are really down on communism, aren't they? They hate it.
I've heard that.
But imagine if we could all be paid equally for our skills. Poor old Vikram,
Chris
Bisson, wouldn't have to be grafting, doing his second best skill of being an actor on Emmerdale. Now he could be in Moss Bros, judging people's heights and weights.
It reminded me of you know that bit in American Horror Story, was it last year or the year before that, where there was that witch that could tell the calorie count of any food that she held in her hands. Kind of like that.
They have carnival barkers.
I think that Chris Bisson is a witch.
I think he might be. It's burning. I think that in the olden days, you used to have carnival barkers who would be able to guess your weight.
Yeah.
Keep away from me, you bastard.
So this is the story of Vikram, everybody. He moved into the street in 1999 with his family after Ravi bought the corner shop. Vic was the one that was kind of put in charge of running the shop. He wasn't really interested in that because he'd rather just chase girls, and Leanne and Maxine were two
Hotties.
yes, who fell under Vikram's charms just for a brief amount of times. And he said at the time that when he kissed Tracy Shaw that snog outside the salon was definitely the best moment in my time on the street.
Oh, bless him.
So, like this character profile with My Amazing Fact, his time on the street started with
Can I
his
just
high.
say that his the rest of this quote is like borderline creepy.
Go on.
I just couldn't help myself. It was really great. The most exciting thing I've done in Corrie so far. did Tracy read this? I don't know. I'm sure she was a good sport about it.
I'm sure she
it's
was.
better than him saying, "Oh, it was absolutely rubbish. I don't know where she learned to kiss, but she should get her money back."
I mean, it's pretty. I mean, I can think of worse ways to start your time in Coronation Street, getting to snog Maxine.
Really, Michael? We'll talk about it later.
He was only with her for a little bit. I think he stayed with Leanne for like 3 or 4 months or so. But this was around the time that she was getting divorced from Nick, and she wanted to use Vikram as part of the divorce settlement and say, "Yeah, I want a quick divorce. Look, I've slept with Vikram." And he was like, "I want my name kept out of this. I don't want to be a pawn in your divorce." So she got rid of him, or he got rid of her. Sorry. As well, considering this was only his first year on the programme, he was given quite an important job late in 1999, which was when they did the Corrie After Hours, I think it was called. Do you remember us talking about this before? It was like a 9 o'clock series of episodes of Coronation Street, like 5 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it was about Steve and Vikram going to Calais, then kind of on a booze cruise.
Oh, those were the days.
I know, I can't do that anymore. Well, actually, Steve didn't end up going to Calais. He ended up getting diverted because they went to Brighton first, where Vicky, Steve's ex-wife, was living, and he wanted to, try and get back with her. This also was the series of episodes that saw Julie Goodyear make her first return as Bet, and Ken Morley was in it as well as Reg Holsworth. So it was a really interesting idea, and I don't think it's anything that Coronation Street has done since. I'm pretty sure they haven't. Having a handful of ex-cast members or ex-characters who had only been gone for 3-4 years at the time, coming back in their own little self-contained series of episodes, along with a couple of current characters, Vic and Steve. I'd be interested to see them, do that. Like, I don't know, what's Lloyd and Andrea up to at the moment? Would you be interested in that?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
But anyway, it was quite fun at the time. I don't remember the episodes being particularly brilliant, but the concept of having this was quite fun. Anyway, he ends up crossing the channel on his own, and where he ends up meeting a French hitchhiker called Gabrielle, and they end up having a bit of hanky-panky together en France. Comes back to Weatherfield. I think Steve gets in trouble. Maybe they both get in trouble. I can't remember, after getting caught with all their duty-free, and Vikram ends up losing control of the shop because Ravi Ravi, his dad, his brother dies. Ravi goes off to Bombay.
So
So
his
he sells
uncle,
a-
Vikram's uncle, dies.
No, yes. Vikram's uncle dies. Ravi goes off to Bombay to sort it out, and he
It's
never
not
comes
called
back
that
again. What's it called now?
Don't remember.
I don't remember. Doesn't matter.
Why'd you put me on the spot?
No, I thought that you were being very knowledgeable, and I thought you might know that. This, I'll fill the dead air by telling you the other story. This is when they had the big scandal with the actor who played Ravi, and I can't remember what he was called now. And I really, really enjoyed Ravi, but he made a bit of a
Mumbai.
scene. Oh yeah, of course. He made a bit of a scene on a train, I think. I don't know whether he was drunk or what, but he was a little bit disgraced and had to leave Coronation Street. So Ravi,
Be careful, everybody.
yes, don't
We love
disgrace
you, and we
yourself
don't
on
want
a
you.
train.
We don't want you to quit.
Yes. So yeah, they had to get rid of Ravi, and this is when Dev came into the show. So 20 years, blimey. Anyway, Vikram was pretty furious about losing the shop, even though he wasn't, as I say, didn't massively enjoy running it.
Well, he lost his inheritance.
He lost his inheritance, yeah, because Dev certainly
What's the
wasn't going
point
to
of
give it
having
to him.
parents?
And he didn't like the fact that he now had a new boss by way of, Dev.
Yeah. So in 2000, he borrows money off Dev because, who better than the person you hate the most to be in debt to? £8,000, he gets the loan. He sets up Streetcars with Steve, and we did a tweet recently because it was the 20th anniversary of Streetcars, and those two are the founding duo behind Streetcars.
Indeed.
Steve only remains.
Yeah, but although at the time, Jez Quigley, who's notorious bad guy, played by Lee Boardman, who's
guy.
the same birthday as me, was kind of pulling the strings because Steve owed him money, and I can't remember whether Jez was trying to get Steve to transport drugs in the taxis. That
Really
sounds
should
like
have
a
just
sort of thing they had
borrowed the
been
money
doing
off
back then.
Dev and given it straight to Jez, but I'm not in charge of Steve's
Well,
finances, and I don't think he is either.
He wanted to get out of the shop. Like I said, he didn't enjoy working for Dev, and he thought he'd be feeling very enterprising
Vikrams.
and started this new business on his own.
Yeah, so this is also the 20th anniversary of the first episode for Eileen Grimshaw, because it was in a cab, in Streetcar's cab, that she first appeared when Vikram picked her up, and he was so impressed by her local knowledge that he offered her a job on the Switch.
Yep.
And history was made that day.
Oh, it was. having Eileen, that was such a great combination of characters, particularly Eileen, and she was a real breath of fresh air on the programme. She was so like sarky and narky and mardy with the customers. We still get to see slithers of that now, but the beginnings of Eileen on the Switch was a really fantastic casting and some great writing for Sue Cleaver as well.
Not so much these days, but I would say generally Streetcars is the most interesting business to watch, and they've got a really good mix of characters. They always seem to manage to get a group of characters that are really fun to watch on their downtime in that office, just bickering with each other.
Yeah.
Really good chemistry between all the actors, even though they've swapped out the third person, Steve and Eileen, and then the third person, who is now Tim, was Lloyd, was Vikram.
Yeah, Simon
managed.
Gregson has had great chemistry with everybody that's worked in there. He's really been the glue that's held them all together.
Must have good pheromones.
But I do miss Steve and Lloyd. They were
know,
brilliant.
they were
But
good.
Steve and Tim are
Steve and
really
Tim
funny
are a
together
lot of
as well.
people's favourites too. So
Yeah, absolutely. You do go through periods, and I think we're in a bit of a patch like that now, where you don't see
very much
very
from
much
them.
Streetcars at all, but then at other times you get loads and loads and loads, and we've also, it's similar to the Rovers as well, although it always used to be there was always something going on in the back room of the Rovers, but even that we
What's
just don't
going
see
on?
anymore.
Wow. Anyway,
It's because everything's in the flipping cafe at the moment. Whenever characters want to have downtime, they also need a cheap cup of tea at the same time.
yeah. So in 2000, Vikram also briefly dates Candice, who claims she's 18, but she's actually 14. And he finds out when he takes her to the Rovers and she gets kicked out for being too young, and he is absolutely mortified and dumped her immediately. Can you imagine if that was now?
Well, they didn't go to bed together, at least. It was so brief, all he managed to get round to doing was taking her to the Rovers and, and being told the error of his ways.
I mean, is this... What lesson does this teach men? I mean,
It's the same with Bethany, wasn't it? When
It's
she
not
came
wrong.
back, who was it that she convinced? Was it Gary or somebody? Remember
Don't
when
trust
Lucy
women.
Fallon started in the show? She's like, "Yeah, I'm 18," and then somebody takes her to the Rovers, and everyone's like, "Hang on a minute, you're Bethany." It's not
You could have said, like, don't date women who are really young. And you could have said, always ask to see somebody's birth certificate when you start dating. But no, you just went
straight for it.
Don't trust women. They're always lying about their age. When they're young, they say they're old. And when they're old, they say they're young.
So 2001, he had quite a string of women.
was a
Did
bit
old
of a
Vikram,
Lothario,
didn't he?
wasn't he?
Yeah. So Karen he dated in 2001. This is before she'd been out with Steve when she was still Karen Phillips.
This is the Karen.
This is the Karen. This
Corrie
is the
Karen.
Saran Jones Karen. But she was sadly for Vikram was a little bit more interested in Steve, and she ended up having a bit on the side, a bit of an affair with old Steve. So he dumped her and then went out with Bobby Lewis instead. Now that's another name, Bobby Lewis. Gemma, tell me everything you know about her.
She invented
You don't remember Bobby, do you?
the John Lewis and also the hair
The
bobby.
bobby pin. That's another name, Bobby Lewis. Does anybody remember her? I can picture what she looks like, and she was in the programme for a good 2, 3, 4 years.
Now her
maybe.
name is spelt Bobbi.
Yes.
So I imagine that she signed it with a heart over the I.
Probably. She was one of the many factory girls that they had churning through that rotation of extras in the factory, but I don't remember very much about what she did at all. But he went out with her for a bit anyway. I think that at a time I think that Karen and Vikram had been trying to set Steve up with Bobby for a little bit, but anyway, he was going out with her.
She's also named after her dog.
Hmm?
Bobby, the dog. Our
What?
beloved dog.
Your nan's Bob.
My nan's
As a bit of a
Bobby.
deep cut for the podcast listeners. So he, what else
You get
did he
a
do
point
that
if
year?
you know that reference.
He dressed up. He and Steve dressed up as the ABBA Girls as part of a drag karaoke night, which is quite interesting because we just saw on the classic Coronation Street another drag night, didn't we, where the women had to dress up as men.
True.
And we got to see
That was more
Bet and
progressive.
Betty being Laurel and Hardy. Yeah, so they were ABBA. Steve, by the end of the year, has already got married to Karen, and I think this is the time when she convinced Steve to marry her for a bet. I think. And anyway, Vikram was the best man, so he obviously pretty quickly got over the fact that that Steve stole his girlfriend from under his nose.
If your ex-boyfriend is willing to be the best man at your wedding, should you be grateful or like a bit snubbed? Like he's so over you that he doesn't care.
I know, within the same year. So this is you can tell this is another one that I got from this news site. So at the end of 2001, Vikram was at I don't know whether it was in the Rovers or was it in the factory, but there was a scene where he gets held down and stripped by various female characters who are all trying to show off about how muscly and manly all their boyfriends are, and they were and all the other guys were taking their clothes off and showing off, and Vikram was like, "No, you're alright, thanks." So they grab hold of him,
Oh, dear.
tear his clothes off, and he has to end up running down the street half naked. And 5 viewers complained to the ITC back then, which
I
is
bet
the
you more would
pre-Ofcom.
complain now. I mean, that's awful.
Yeah, it wasn't upheld though.
Really?
Yeah.
It's okay to sexually harass a man.
I can't remember what the reason was that they decided not to. I think they're like, it was fine. We didn't see much nudity, and
I
it was
don't
just
care.
It was Christmas jollities. We've all done it, haven't we? Said the ITC,
ITC went, whoa.
and that's why we don't have the ITC anymore. Now, although Vikram was quite pleased to be going out with Bobby at that time, and he'd been going out with her for half a year or so, he didn't want to settle down. He wanted to make sure he could spread his wild oats still.
Yeah.
He wanted to be able to play the field, and when she starts moving stuff into his flat at the end of 2001, he's like, putting the brakes on that, missus. And so he's like, no, you're not moving in. And she feels like she's being taken for granted a little bit by him.
If you can't even have your hair brushed around your boyfriend's house, what hope is there for you?
So far, Vikram, he's been in the show 3 years now, and he's not really had very many stories at all. And it was in 2002, his final year on the show, that finally they thought,
Let's just do something with this
let's
guy.
give him a story.
Well,
And
let's see what
I guess he
happens.
didn't like it because he was gone by the end of the year. But go on, Gemma. Now, you watched this and I watched this. I was reading about this on the internet. I was like, I don't remember this at all. So I'm impressed with you if you
2002,
do.
I wouldn't remember anything that happened that year. Apparently, he had an affair with an older woman named Hazel Wilding, and then when Karen found out about it, she told Bobby, who then decides to complain to Streetcars anonymously in various wigs and moustaches.
I think she did it over the phone. It's like,
Probably.
although as we know from
Hello.
Jenny Bradley, putting a wig on for your
It will help you.
yeah, we'll help you with your disguise.
So she complains to the taxi licensing enforcement team about Streetcars, and then she buggers off after, ruining everybody's business. Vic also ends up in a fight with Hazel's husband, which unfortunately led to Chris having to go to physiotherapy, because when he filmed the stunts for this, I guess they let him do a bit more than they normally would, and he got whiplash and had to go off and get himself sorted out.
Yeah, no, I found loads of news articles about this. I don't remember it at all. And I know a lot of people don't remember much about, their early years of university, but I didn't even drink, so I don't know what my excuse is for not remembering this story.
Was I even watching it then?
Yeah, you were.
What year was this?
This was 2002.
So this was when we were living in Portswood.
No. This was beginning of 2002. So we were living in the halls of residence together.
I wouldn't have watched it though, would I? Did I?
I would have probably, yeah. I think you were watching it back then. I think I got you hooked pretty quickly.
I don't believe you. Also, 2002, he becomes addicted to horse racing after
Betting on horse racing, that
betting.
is.
Not
I'm
just like
gonna sneak to the racetrack
I
at
just
night.
love to grab that horse and go running down the road with it. I love to race horses. They always win. One day I'll get them. He gets a jockey in his cab as a
Yes.
customer, and they give him some tips, and he becomes addicted to betting and gambling and gets debts of £8,000.
It's such a cliche soap story, isn't it? Getting addicted to gambling or whatever, racking up your debts.
Well, you've got to be careful. You've got to stop when it stops being fun. That's what they say.
Indeed.
I only like horse racing because I get to wear a hat when I go to see it. He also has a fling with Maria.
Yeah.
Very beautiful young woman, I can imagine why. He then steals £2,000 from Streetcars and smuggles drugs. God. In from Barbados.
They really did a number on his character at the end of the
I know,
day.
they're like, do you know what? We're sick of you. you're a gambling, drug addict, drug mule. Okay.
He was not a bad guy. I mean, I say
Michael, it all goes downhill. You think you're a good guy, but you've never been tested, have you? With debts.
No. Well.
All right, you got a credit card. It's not the same thing.
He's probably got more than £8,000 on it. But it was different back then. I always remember Vikram, like, he was just a nice enough guy. He wasn't like, I don't remember him being totally dodgy or anything. But yeah, 2002 is like, right, he's going to have an affair. He's going to, become a drug smuggler.
Gambling addict.
Yeah.
I mean, really, though, is that not the trajectory of every Coronation Street's character? Pretty much debts, gambling.
Yeah, taxi
crime.
out of Weatherfield.
So anyway, he smuggles drugs in from Barbados, but it's in Maria's suitcase. So this, I remember in the early 2000s, this being a massive story in the UK, where various white people would find themselves in trouble with the law because they they claimed that they didn't know that stuff was in their suitcase when they went on holiday to all these exotic places and come back with all these drugs. And everyone was in an uproar because they ended up in prison in some random country, and people were like, you can't do that to white people, what do you mean? But anyway, so Maria is the drugs mule.
I can't remember. I assume she dumps him after that. I don't know. I haven't written it down.
So he tries to pay off his debts for that, and then he gets asked to do it again. So he decides to use Steve and Karen this time, and he gives them a free holiday to Tenerife in a trick. But when they come back, Steve finds drugs in the bottom of his suitcase and realises what's going on. I don't understand this. Steve finds the other side of having successfully smuggled them into the country, and then he dumps them in the canal.
What would you do? Go, I'm quite good at that, actually. I'm going to do it again.
No,
It's easy.
I'd say, well, I've got them now. You want them back, Vikram? You've got to give me some cash.
Steve says drugs are bad.
Yeah, but if they're bad for you, they're bad for the canal. Think of the ecosystem. Think of all those tiny little sticklebacks that are probably dead now. He tells Vikram to leave Weatherfield for good, and so he does, and he goes to India.
Yeah, so Vikram's been living in India for the last 18 years.
I wonder
Never
how he
to
is.
be seen again. I can't remember. He's probably been mentioned since, hasn't he? Dev's been over, and Asher and Adi, and
Did they mention him going? Yeah, they've mentioned India.
No, I think that they might have mentioned Vikram again. So I think he's still.
India's
he's
quite
still
a
living
big
it up in
country,
there.
and quite a few people live there.
Anyway, that was all that Vikram did. So not a huge amount on the street, and I think Chris wanted to spread his wings, and he was realising that there wasn't very much going for him at the time. He announced in August 2002 that he was going to be leaving, and this did leave fans to speculate whether he might be one of Richard Hillman's next victims, because I think it must have been around mid-2002 where he clonks Patricia Hillman and sees Dougie Ferguson off as well. And
Richard does, not
Richard
Vikram.
does, yes. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. And Corrie was like, they're riding on this. We've got a serial killer here, and people are like, is Vikram going to be the next victim? Also, at that time, Georgia Taylor announced that she was leaving and quitting as Toyah. So there was a group of characters that ITV announced that one of these could be Richard Hillman's next victim, and both Toyah and Vikram were on the list. But
oh my God!
Fortunately, they both escaped the black-gloved serial killer. At the time when Chris left, this is what he said. To leave a family as warm and caring as Coronation Street has been one of the most difficult decisions I've ever had to make. I had 4 fantastic years as part of the most talented team in British television. I'm very grateful to those who've made it so special, and that includes, most importantly, the viewers. In a few months, I will bid a fond farewell to Vic and Streetcars, as the time has come for me to diversify and meet fresh challenges. 2003 will be a new adventure, and I look forward to it. So
what a lovely thing to say.
That seems kind of a quite standard thing to say, especially if you know you're not going to get killed off. You want to maybe keep the door open for a return.
It's also really cool that he diversified and went off into another soap that's also on ITV.
He did a few other things before taking the little leap over to Emmerdale. Yeah, but then also that year we had some interviews with various media outlets where he had quite a different attitude. He kind of burned his bridges a little bit. For example, there was one interview in the Mirror, and he said that he left because he found his character boring. He said, I was very frustrated with my storylines, and I'm not the only one. It's probably my mum, right?
My mum was
like, when are they going to give you a story,
this is a load
Chris?
of crap, Chris.
My character was going nowhere.
Going Emmerdale, it's brilliant.
I made my feelings clear to bosses, but they didn't do anything about it.
Oh.
I got to the stage where I'd had enough. Once I decided, the only person I confided in was Stephen Arnold.
It's probably him that leaked this.
He was trying to talk me out of it, but I felt I'd done my time on the street.
Aww.
It's one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. My co-stars were gutted and the bosses weren't thrilled either. They wanted me to stay, but I'd rather take a pay cut and star in a more challenging role in the West End.
Oh dear, talk about...
I know.
Well, look, you can really totally sympathise with anybody who's in a show and they feel like they're not getting very interesting storylines.
It does make you think, though, because when people, leave Coronation Street, if they act or they choose to leave, they always have good things to say, don't they?
Of course.
It's
very honest.
For Chris to turn around and say this.
It's
quite refreshing.
It's refreshing and honest, because anyone who leaves the show, you can tell a character where an actor's left the show because the character has just been treading water, and totally sympathise with them and find it just frustrating that the people in charge can't use... It's so difficult, though, because they can't make everybody the main character, but
no, it
feels like
it must have been such an honour for him to come in at the time, being part of Corrie's first Asian family.
Well, yeah, also completely overdue.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then once you're in and they don't do anything with you, it's like, oh,
they've got to be careful. They're going to do the same thing with.
Well,
Baileys,
I was going to say, there's definite parallels to the Baileys there, aren't there? And at least with the Baileys, they're trying to give them various little stories here and there. But
I know, but this is the thing: you really can't just coast on.
Yet.
You can't coast on diversity hires now, can you? You can't just say, look, now we've got this family and we've brought them in because they're from this background and we want to prove how PC we are, and then just not do anything with them. You can't get away with it now.
Yeah, you really have
to put your money where your mouth is.
The quality of the writing. You got to have storyline ideas.
They've done it all right, but I'm really surprised with the Baileys that they haven't pushed them.
Yeah.
More to the front.
When they brought Mandy and Jenna in as well, they kind of said, well, those two plus Lloyd are Corrie's first black family, but it wasn't quite the same, was it? And they didn't live together on the street or anything like that. But again, what happened to them?
I know.
They, other soaps haven't had anywhere near the same sort of problems as Corrie has with giving their families from different backgrounds something to do. Although, main story at the moment, we've got the Nazirs in the centre of it, and we've got the stuff with
they
Asher
have
as
done
well.
A really good job. I said that recently. The Asian actors on the show are doing a massively good job, and Corrie are doing a brilliant job putting them in the forefront. And I guess one of the things that soaps are worried about is they don't want to make race-specific stories because, number one, they're scared of getting it wrong, and if you're scared of getting it wrong, maybe just hire a more diverse writing team and then you won't have so many problems. And number two, they're worried about alienating viewers who some people are very ignorant and stupid and will think, well, this doesn't apply to me, so I'm not interested. But the Nazirs, this storyline that they've got, the domestic abuse and coercive control stuff, is a universal storyline.
Yeah, nothing
Why
to do
on
with
earth
the
can't
race.
can't they do more stories like that with the Baileys and stuff?
Yeah. What else? So this is my other information that I found about Vikram and Chris. He said, apparently there was one time when he got his knuckles rapped by the show's bosses because he didn't turn up to work one morning, and he was usually, apparently, very, very reliable, like one of the most reliable and on the cast at getting in on time. But
I can't believe that you even have a list of the most reliable. Like, literally, it's your job to go to work.
I'm really
Why would
interested
there
to
be
know, like,
people that aren't reliable?
Of the current cast, who's not reliable?
If I was
who has to be phoned up by a McLeod, like, get out of bed, you lazy article.
No, if I was the producer, you didn't turn up to work. First time, okay. Second time, what's your excuse? Third time, you're out.
I wonder whether, like,
I don't
over
care.
the years,
I don't care
different
who
producers have been harsher about
wouldn't
that.
care who you were. Doesn't matter.
The thing is,
you could be the most famous person in the show. You'd be kicked out.
There have been very, very few axings from producers in recent years.
Yeah,
haven't
I know.
There have been lots of characters that have left, but a lot of them have left because they've chosen to do so.
I feel as though, it's very interesting to see the different styles of producers. I think I'd be a bitch if I was in charge. But really, if I'm paying you, I mean, if you would get fired for being a checkout assistant, you would get fired for being an actor. The same thing. If you do the same thing wrong, you get fired.
But, I mean, you do get these people in Coronation Street, and naming no names, but I'm sure we can all think of a few, who probably do think that they can get away with murder.
I'm sure they
and they've been in the show for a long time, or they're a big name maybe. And Corrie says, "Oh, nobody's bigger than the show," but
I bet. I know.
But yeah. Anyway, so the story was that Chris was usually quite good at getting to Corrie on time.
There's no excuse for not going to work when you're supposed to be going to work.
He got his timings wrong. He thought that he was due in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's
but actually
fair
they
enough.
phoned him up in the morning and was like, "Where are you?" And he was in a club in London after an all-night bender. So he was like, I'm not going to be able to get in 2 hours. I'm the opposite end of the country, but they let him off that one time.
That's okay.
That
For one time, but getting your times mixed up is different from swanning in hours late and thinking that you're too cool.
Yeah, but he had been partying quite hard the night before, so
I know, but do you know what? You say this. He couldn't make it in the morning because he'd been partying till 9 o'clock, but he was supposed to be in the afternoon.
I know.
What was his plan?
Yeah.
Get on a train and go to sleep.
I'm just about to come up to Manchester. It's only how long's the train to Manchester from London? It's quite
a few hours.
5 hours. So.
No, it's not 5 hours. You're thinking of the coach.
Oh yeah, of course.
Get on a coach for 5 hours and have a kip.
Another thing, a little nugget that I found was from 2001. He spoke to the Sunday People where he said, "I get requests for autographs, but I've never had a pair of knickers sent to me."
That sounds to me like you're inviting knickers to be sent to you, Chris.
Apparently he did often go to places and he was swamped by girls, but none of them thought to actually send the knickers. I wonder whether that's why he decided to leave in 2002. Either he still wasn't getting the knickers, or he got his first pair of knickers and was like,
time to move on.
Yeah, or like, this is all I wanted, and I feel hollow now that I've had this pair of granny pants sent to me.
My dream's been achieved, and it wasn't exactly what I thought I would.
Yeah, mate, I wonder whether he's had any knickers sent to him from his time on Emmerdale. He's still waiting for that first
pair. If
pair.
he wants a pair, I've got some that I was going to throw out. The elastic's gone and stuff.
Just ask, Chris, if you're listening.
Anyone, also anybody. You want a pair of knickers? If you're not famous, there will be a small fee. But I'm perfectly happy to send them. I need to go in the bin.
I also wanted, when I was doing a bit of research for this, to find out, because like I said, one of the reasons that we put a bit cram this week was because of the race story that's going on with the Baileys at the moment, and I wanted to see if there was anything, any issues that Chris or his family had. And apparently his family, the Bisson family, came to the UK in the late 60s, and his uncle didn't stay here very long because they're from Trinidad originally, and he was refused service in a cafe, his uncle, so he was like, I'm not staying here. It must have been awful back then. Family then moved to Liverpool, where they also weren't welcomed, and it was like, no Irish, no blacks, no whatever.
Nobody else.
Yeah,
Nobody
but then they
allowed.
went to Manchester, where they were more accepted. So that's where the family stayed. So I thought that was quite nice in the end, although it's shocking. Well, not shocking. It's just really sad that they had to go through this. Also, one
This
time,
is awful.
You
Well,
say
he had an interview on the radio with GWR radio host Andy Styles, and I guess he thought he was making a joke, but it wasn't funny. He said, "What was the biggest shock of your life? Was it when you looked in the mirror and realised you were Asian?"
I know.
What
awful.
does that mean? And Chris was like,
Yeah.
and so he had to apologise, and they never aired the interview.
They didn't even share the interview. They didn't even air the interview.
What?
So
I don't get it. Maybe he was drunk.
I don't know. Sometimes you say things that you think are funny, and then look back on them and go,
Oh no. Well, I've done that many times on the podcast.
Yeah, luckily, unlike the set with live radio, we can edit them out.
I know, but usually you put them in anyway, and then I just feel guilty all Saturday, and then nobody says anything. So
Anyway,
then I get
so
over myself.
You do. That was.
But I've never said anything like that to anybody because it doesn't even make any sense.
No, it really doesn't. That's very rude. He left Corrie then. That was it. He was out. I looked on his IMDb page, and there's quite a lot there. It's mostly like one-offs or short movies or TV movies or things like that. He was apparently a regular in the first few series of Shameless. I don't know whether he shared the screen with Sally Carman at all.
Oh.
And yeah, but ever since 2009, he's been playing Jay Sharma in Emmerdale. I don't know how big a character Jay is. You could give me any Emmerdale character's name apart from that Marlon, and I'd be like, I don't know.
The Dingles. I know the Dingles.
Are they big or are they small?
Well, he's
I've
been
got
in
no
over
idea.
1,200 episodes, so
Yeah,
he's
the episode count has somewhat dwarfed his time in Coronation
a
Street.
little bit, yeah.
He
When they do his biography, they're not going to be like he was in Corrie and also in Emmerdale.
no,
It'll be the other way round, won't it?
yeah, but it is funny because, like I say, whenever I see him, instantly I'm like, that's Vikram, and when I turn over, oh, it's Vikram, and there's so many other actors that I wouldn't be like that if I saw them. It's like I think I remember them before. But,
He goes to show you he was very charismatic.
interestingly, at the moment, his on-screen mother-in-law in Emmerdale is played by Manpreet Jutla, who played his sister Nita in Coronation Street.
I wonder
So
whether
that's really weird that 20
is,
years later they're now sharing the screen together.
I know,
with
but she's his mother-in-law. I wonder whether
I
she's
know.
like, this isn't. Well, I'm glad you're paying me for this. 'Cause
So there's a few articles that I found that pointed that out. Like, did you know you'd never believe that they've been together on screen before. He got an award in 2014 for best TV character in the Asian Media Awards.
Good.
That's jolly good.
Cool.
Which makes me think he must be pretty big name on Emmerdale. And in the second series of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, he came 8th out of 10. But don't worry, Chris, it's the taking part that counts.
As long as he didn't have to eat anything horrible.
He probably did.
He probably refused, and that's why he got kicked out.
Oh, maybe. There's been quite a few Corrie stars that have gone on to do bigger things in Emmerdale, and it's always weird switching on, or even like when we've been to the Soap Awards and we've seen various ex-Coronation Street cast, and we go, oh, I remember them at so-and-so, but everyone else is cheering for them for other things. Like, do you remember when we went to the London one a few years ago and we saw Gaynor Faye there?
Yeah.
And she was before your time she was in Coronation Street before your time watching it anyway, wasn't
Yeah.
But still, whenever I see her, it's like, that's Judy Mallet. And she was only in the show for 2 years, 3 years maybe, but she made a really big impression. But she went on, she was in Emmerdale up until last year. She was in it for like 6 or 7 years or so. So that's quite funny. And we also saw at the Soap Awards one time John Bowe, who played Dougie Ferguson.
Yeah.
Do you remember him being there? I think it was the year when Emmerdale did really, really well, and he was there cheering on, and we saw him getting into a taxi. But everyone saw him as Emmerdale guy. We got Bill Ward. He moved on from Corrie into Emmerdale. He was Charlie Stubbs in Corrie,
Yeah.
and he was the he was the one that started off the motorway crash in Emmerdale, wasn't he? You
Oh,
remember
yeah.
you see the clip of him falling backwards down into the motorway. At the moment, we've got Rhys Dinsdale in Emmerdale, who played Joe McIntyre.
Yes, that's right. I've seen him in that. Started this year.
Yes, Sally Ann Matthews did a turn in Emmerdale for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So I think she must be one of the few that's done Corrie, then Emmerdale,
Then Corrie
then
again.
back to Corrie again. But I mean, unlike, I don't know. I wonder, because we said that Chris is going to be known for his Emmerdale role,
Before his Corrie role.
yeah, when all is said and done, and it makes me wonder with some of these other actors, what's going to be at the top of their Wikipedia page. Like Gaynor Faye, I guess, with so many years in Emmerdale, she's going to be known for that more. Bill Ward, I don't know. Sally Ann Matthews is obviously Corrie first.
Yeah.
But it is funny to think that she was in Emmerdale as well at the same time. And Gemma, our favourite, Sandra Gough, was also in Emmerdale for quite a period as well.
When was she in it then?
What, in Emmerdale?
Yeah.
She was in it for a little bit in the late 90s. I think she was like on and off. I've written down here 1984 to 1991, but it wasn't a continuous
in
stretch of
Emmerdale?
time. That was in Emmerdale because she was in Corrie up until 1971, I think. Had a massive break and then went to Emmerdale for a bit, and then she was back in Emmerdale playing a different character. I think she was one of the Dingles in 1995.
Oh, I love Sandra Gough.
I know, that's why she needs to come back. And she hasn't done a whole lot of TV since either. We've also had, where we had Sally Ann Matthews doing Corrie, Emmerdale, Corrie, we also had Claire King doing Emmerdale, Corrie, Emmerdale, because she was Erica in Coronation Street, but I think she's going to go down as Kim Tate first, and her stint in Coronation Street as Emmerdale will come...
As Erica.
Sorry, Corrie as Emmerdale. As Erica is going to come quite down her list
Perhaps.
of television.
But she was great
achievements.
as well, wasn't she? I liked her.
Yeah. So it's not just producers that Corrie and Emmerdale are swapping back and forth between
No, I
each
know.
other. Or that.
Very incestuous.
Yeah. I've seen quite a lot of praise online for Ian McLeod recently, and for what he's been doing on Coronation Street, and it is going through quite a good patch at the moment, and people were quite surprised really because I think he wasn't particularly popular in Emmerdale, and what he did there wasn't lauded anywhere near as much as his predecessor Kate Oates, but I think people have been quite surprised that he's doing all right now. I don't know who the producer of Emmerdale is now. I don't know whether we'll get them again next time.
It did feel at one point that it was literally the hierarchy was you start on Hollyoaks or Emmerdale, then you do Corrie, and then you go off and do something else.
Yeah, I don't know what Stuart Blackburn's doing at the moment, because he was Emmerdale before Coronation Street, wasn't he? Then they really need to spread.
Perhaps they need to
spread
get
the net
somebody
a bit
different.
further. Yeah. I was also thinking about other characters that have been in Coronation Street and moved on to other soaps, and I think the big one for me is also Nikki Sanderson, who we talked about earlier, for Candice. She's massive now on Hollyoaks. I can't remember what the character is that she's played, but I don't know whether she's won awards, but she's been up for awards, and she's quite a big name there. So Corrie is certainly a launching point for many soap stars' careers. In other shows.
Yeah, that's right. Or just staying in the show that they're in.
So, what's Vikram's legacy? It's Streetcars, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Although it'll also being part of the First Asian family, because Dev's been in it for a good 20 years strong now, and although I know a lot of people, make fun of Dev a bit, and I don't know how many major stories I'd ever say he's had, but he's certainly an important Coronation Street character that had Vikram and Nita and Ravi not come in the show. I don't know whether we'd have ever had Jimmy as well, and I'm wondering now we've got Adi and Asha coming to the forefront a bit more, whether that means we're going to see more of Dev.
Yeah, I mean, you say he's the first part of the First Asian family and everything, and we're talking about diversity, but diversity is important not just to have various different types of people on the show, but also within those groups to have variety, because when you're part of a group that isn't represented very well, and you've only got one person that you can sort of relate to, it becomes difficult,
Yeah,
from my own experience of like being when I was a kid, and if you wanted to play, I used to be into computer games, and I could only ever be one girl. It gets very annoying, and and that's nothing like what it's like to be a part of a minority group in this country, because you're really underrepresented then. So that's why I'm glad that there are more Asian characters now, and there's a bit more variety of people that you can kind of look at, and you don't fall into this trap that Corrie's fallen in with, like, say, disabled characters, where you've only got Izzy in a wheelchair. She's the only sort of really...
Well, you got Alex as well.
You got Alex, and I guess Aled at some point will, because he's deaf. But when you've only got one person, you fall into the trap of having to be very careful in the way that you represent them, because that's the entirety of your disabled characters. You've got to be so careful. Whereas when you've got lots of characters from a group, you don't have to be... The kid gloves can kind of come off a little bit, and you can be a bit...
It's all right,
more
Vikram's smuggling drugs and he's an addict, but look at...
There's another Asian over here, look, being good.
Yeah,
so
although I don't even remember at the time when Vic left, who was... I suppose there was Devids. Womanising.
But you see what I
Dev.
mean? Yeah, but you see what I mean, though. You get
totally.
it's really... You've got to be careful.
Yeah, but I think Streetcars is the main legacy, although I don't think... people think of Streetcars as being Steve's. I think people quite often forget the previous... I mean, even people might not remember Lloyd. He's sadly been a bit forgotten, but definitely Vic. I think it was quite a clever move bringing Streetcars into it. It's been very useful having a cab.
It would have been really nice to have gotten a 20-year anniversary call out for Vikram from Steve in just kind of a throwaway line, but it's difficult to do those.
It's so hard sometimes thinking of new businesses that will work well on the street, and we've like thought of ideas of always say maybe they had this, maybe they had that, but it's only sometimes they'll do one that will strike gold. Like when they brought in the Barlow's Buys, for example, that seems like why not? There's a lot of that kind of shop appearing on the high streets at the moment. Let's put one in Corrie, but then at the end of the day, they didn't have a whole lot to do with them, and I suppose it just proves that what a good idea it was to put a taxi firm in. That 20 years later, it's still running.
Yeah, definitely.
Shows no signs of stopping,
down.
but because it as I said, it's given us the scenes in the cab. I think having Eileen there was
Eileen's really great.
She's really helped that business to continue to flourish, and it's always good to have a taxi.
Yeah.
Everybody always needs a taxi on Coronation Street. You don't always need a second-hand copy of Windows 95, which is why Barlow's Buys folded after a few years.
I guess the only thing better, really, would be a Greggs.
Yeah.
Put a Greggs
Everyone
in there.
loves the Greggs. So that is it. That's what little we remember of Vikram, but now we are Vikram experts. And if you were to ask me a question about Vikram in the next Coronation Street podcast quiz, I'd know.
Oh, well.
Hazel is the name of the old woman that he had an affair with.
When was he in it, though?
1999 to 2002, so it's...
okay.
I've
got some stuff for this year.
You could be some stuff coming up for a couple of years, yeah, definitely. Anyway, if anybody listening has got any actual memories of Vikram, and not just stuff that they read off Corriepedia or various news sites, and we've forgotten anything, do write in and let us know.
Yes.
And what's he like on Emmerdale as well?
Yeah, if you like him on Emmerdale.
If you're an Emmerdale watcher,
tell us what you think of him.
One, how do you have time to watch two soaps?
Yeah.
And two, what's he like?
What's he like?
Is he like Vikram? And do you see him as Jay, or do you see him as Vikram now when you first spot him?
Exactly. So, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find us online at conversationstreet.podbean.com, at Conversation Street on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes.
YouTube.
We're on YouTube, and you might be listening to this on YouTube. There's lots of other stand-alone segments of episodes to listen to that as well.
Indeed.
Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Ta-ra for now.
Hello, darlings. It's me, Claudia Colby. Welcome to my character profile.
No, I'm Claudia Colby, darling.
We can't both be Claudia. I think it's going to take a long time to get through the entire profile if we...
I love Claudia.
Talk slowly.
Such a rich, luscious voice.
Such a rich, just end there. So rich.
So rich and wealthy. You can tell by her hair.
Welcome to the Conversation Street character profile of Claudia Colby, played by Rula Lenska, who is sadly no longer in the show.
I know.
The bomb that was dropped on us last week. Presumably.
Well,
I mean, I don't know even whether Coronation Street's come out officially and said, cheers, Rula.
No, she
But-
certainly hasn't said thanks for the cash, guys.
Just a drop in the ocean, darling, of the Lenska fortunes.
It's going to help me pay off my window washing bill for my fifth castle.
Yeah, so I think we can only assume that she's gone, and the reports are that she's gone. It's very sad because
absolutely love
it came out of
her.
nowhere. And when she returned to the show a couple of years ago, I thought it was heralding a brand new era of Rula's reign.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, what's she have? 2-3 years, I suppose. I can't remember how long she's been back. Two,
remember
maybe.
when we saw her before it was announced. Remember?
Yes, that was amazing.
We went to Manchester and we had to keep it secret because we not, as we already said, spoiler-free podcast. We didn't mention that we saw her in the distance, and she came up and we're like,
we
really?
told this story on the podcast before.
I know,
but it's,
I don't care.
It's because it's Rula Lenska, don't it? Yeah, we were waiting outside the back gate, and then we saw this
I looked over and I
fabulous,
saw this
massive red
giant
hair
flame-haired beauty
coming through the car park and out the
navigating her
back gate.
suitcase out of the security gate, probably full of silk scarves and
And we
golden
were like,
bangles.
I think that's
That
Rula
might be
Lenska.
Rula Lenska, but I didn't know she was back in the
No,
show.
I think we did know
No, I
that she was
didn't.
back in the show. I think
Well-
maybe I knew she was back in the show. I can't remember now, but yeah, we couldn't talk about it on the podcast until for the next 6, 7, 8 weeks or so until she
Yeah.
actually did appear. But I think we probably let people on social media know. Which, that was lovely, wasn't it?
Oh, she's magnificent.
And again, another story we have told on the podcast time and time again, but not your family's first encounter
Oh, we've said this
with
story
the
too.
Polish countess.
She landed in a hot air balloon. I mean, what a Rula Lenska story. She landed we had the hot air balloon festival in Southampton, which sadly does no longer exist anymore because of the airport. But a load of hot air balloons landed on the Veracity ground, which is like a big common grass area
Like
right
the
next
Red
to our
Wreck.
house. And she just landed in a balloon, and Mum and Dad ran out to help everybody get their balloons off the ground, and she didn't notice he was in the basket. And she was like, "Thank you, darling." Just imagine, she must have been horrified. Where on earth did I land, darling?
In the middle of the dodgy
The
state
commoners
in
are running here. What are they
Southampton.
going to do? I think they're going to steal the basket.
I tried to avoid Southampton Common when I landed. I thought that this was place would be much lovelier, but it's
Southampton
even
Common
worse.
is where we held the festival. So shut your mouth.
Anyway, let's talk Claudia because I'm going to miss her. I hope she comes back. The door has been left open at least
I know.
for for when Still Waters is closed down or
Her
something.
and Lewis add a touch
out.
of class to the show.
I know, and they're both gone. There's nobody quite like Claudia on
Well,
Coronation Street. And
I
there's
know.
been so few, toffs on Corrie.
I just love a toff on Corrie. They're one of my
We're-
favourite character types.
We're loving
Makes me-
Annie Walker at the moment, aren't we?
It makes me feel at home, you see. So they're my people, obviously. I watch them and I'm like, Arias reminds me of more boarding school, darling.
See, Annie Walker really, really did look down her nose at people, didn't she? And she knew that she was better than everybody.
She knew she was
Well,
better.
in her own, there was no
thought-
doubt in her mind that she was better than them. But I don't think that Claudia is quite the same as that. She knows
No.
that she's better off and everything. But
Yeah, that's true. There is a
I don't
difference.
think that she's not snobbish. She just relishes in the fact that brings a touch of class to the cobbles.
There's a difference between thinking that you're better off than people and thinking that you're better than people.
Yes.
And I think Claudia, although she can be snobby at times, sometimes it's fairly well justified.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, so I went onto Corrie to try and find some of the stats of Claudia, and I couldn't find particularly very much. She was born on the 15th of April. I don't think we've actually got a birth year for Claudia.
Well, of course not, she's a lady.
never reveals her age. But she first made her appearance on Coronation Street on the 18th of December 2009. So it's been over 10 years that she's been on the street, although it was obviously very on and off throughout that period. And then her last appearance, as far as we know, was on the 24th of April 2020, but fingers crossed for a return at some point. She made 138 appearances
I
in
knew
total on Coronation
138.
Street. I know, it seems like nothing, does it?
Do you know how to say her real name, Michael?
No, well, here's fact number one that some of you may not know about Rula Lenska. That's not her real name. She's a Polish countess, as I alluded to earlier.
Can you imagine Rula Lenska down the Polish shop? Buying some sausages and some packet soup.
There's a whole thing about the family on Wikipedia, and they've got a coat of arms and everything.
Everyone's got a coat of arms.
They've got a Wikipedia page with their coat
I
of
can
arms.
make a Wikipedia page about my family. Very scandalous. Everyone would love it.
Well, do you want to have a go at saying what Rula's actual name is?
I'm no good at. It's like I don't even know how would you say that. You know how to read these strange.
Well, there are a variety of accents and dots and crossings out.
Rosa Maria Leopoldina Lubenska.
Yeah, exactly like that. Rosa Maria Leopoldina Lubenska is Rula's real name, so it's no wonder that when she went to go into the world of showbiz, in the English-speaking world, she shortened it or chose a new one.
Where did she get the name Rula from?
I don't know. I mean, is Rula actually a name, or did she make it up?
Being ignorant.
All I know is, do you remember? I think it was. Who was that actress that died a few weeks ago? The other posh totty, Honor Blackman, because she was in Coronation Street for a little bit as well, wasn't she? And her character was called Rula. And I'm only kind of guessing that it's because she was a similar kind of person.
It's an Arabic name.
Oh,
from Syria.
I don't know.
Or it could be Latin and means the governess.
Oh well, that's
or it
just
could
perfect.
mean commander. Or it could be that people are really, really into baby names, just make crap up on the internet.
Maybe. Or maybe it's just her favourite piece of stationery in a pencil case.
Oh, you know her sister, Protractor Lenska.
That sounds like Concepta, doesn't it? Protractor Riley. Anyway, so before Coronation Street, obviously, she'd had a long and illustrious career in showbiz. She'd been in TV and film for nearly 40 years before even setting foot on the cobbles.
The thing is about us Brits is that if you've got a posh voice, you can pretty much convince us anything. Like, she went into a casting room, she was like, "Hi, darlings, I don't know if you remember, but you've already cast me in this role, so I'll just take the contract and sign it now."
That's probably how Lummer's got her role as well, isn't it?
"Hi, it's me, Celebrity Lummers." You just get the job half the time. It's a good 50-50 gamble.
We want to try that next time we go there. "Hi, Ian."
"Hi, I'm sorry you're late for our appointment, Ian."
So she'd made her TV debut in 1971 on a programme called The Doctors, and then 1976 there was a show called Rock Follies, which is what kind of made her get her big break, I suppose. Across the pond, she became more famous in the US after starring in a series of VO5 ads.
Is that shampoo? Or is it
I was
diesel?
hoping that you'd
is it petrol?
It's a hair thing. I think you're right. Apparently, there was something I read on the Wikipedia page that there was this American chat show host that made fun of her just because that's all she was known for or something. I don't know, but she then carried on.
Excuse me, making fun of a woman for having fabulous hair? That doesn't sound like a joke to me. That sounds like a compliment.
No, making fun of her because she's only famous for being in hair ads.
So what? Get paid, don't you? Same as anyone else?
She was then in loads of other TV shows.
I'd only be allowed to be in a hair advert if I was the before. So I'm certainly not going to criticise.
She was in a couple of episodes of Doctor Who. She was in Minder. In 2002, she was in 4 episodes of EastEnders. Would you believe?
Can't believe it.
And there was a show of Cluedo in 1991 where she played Mrs. Peacock.
Mrs. Peacock?
Indeed. And
I've never played as
not
Mrs.
talking about
Peacock.
Maxine.
I'm always Miss Scarlet.
She also, thanks to her caramel-like voice, a voiceover and presenter for travel programmes. I can just imagine, like, "I wish you were here, darling." And she recorded.
Do you think that she writes the darlings in, or do you think they just it's just punctuation as far as she's concerned?
She had audiobooks and starred in a number of West End shows where she played a variety of posh totty characters. I can only imagine.
With fabulous hair. Now, in the UK, she blotted her copybook somewhat, not as quite as badly as George Galloway, but still fairly significantly, when she went into the Celebrity Big Brother house in 2006. And some people I know still have not forgiven her and George for their antics.
See, we didn't watch this series of Celebrity Big Brother.
Cringeworthy and infamous, which involved her feeding... Was he an MP at the time, or did he become one later? He's a politician. And she fed him milk because he thought he was a cat or something along those lines, and she's sort of
she was
petting his head and
playing up to it,
and sort of going, "There you go, darling, here's some milk." Very, very cringeworthy, but who has not made a tit of themselves on CBB? Because that's the whole point of the show.
Exactly.
And also, what else happened in CBB over the years?
Well, she's not the only Coronation Street star to
showed herself up.
Yes, let's just put it that way. Plenty
of antics have happened in Big Brother over the years. It's probably one of the most famous, so therefore one of the most successful stunts.
Yeah, that's probably what got her the job on Coronation Street.
She probably just purred down the phone.
You're looking for a new cat to be on the opening sequence.
I know where you can get one.
Well, we have said it's about time that they updated. Actually, this 2006 is before the current title sequences, so they're probably thinking about it.
So you want them to update for the 60th anniversary the Coronation Street intro sequence with George Galloway
just crashing through the ginnel,
squatting on a fence as Rula Lenska holds up a tin of cat food.
Why not?
George, come down, darling.
So let's talk about Claudia's history on the show. When she came into the show in 2009, at that point, or before that point, through her hairdressing endeavours, she'd become friends with Audrey. They had a kind of a friendly rivalry kind of relationship all throughout the years, didn't they? Which I absolutely loved. And her salon was called Perm Suspect, which is another amazing name. I do love a good pun name for a business on Coronation Street, and that one is divine.
I also like the fact that Audrey and Claude, and I also call them... Claude. I also like the shipping name Audria.
Yes.
And I think we should, if we have another cat, cover her is, we should call it Audria. Sorry, Abby.
So her first appearance was at the Weatherfield Council Christmas Do in 2009, where she was escorted by Lewis Archer. So there's always those two names, Claudia and Lewis, were always bound together, weren't they? They often had stories together.
Two little toffs they were.
Yeah, totally. And Audrey meets up with her friend / rival, is pretty shocked that she's got an escort, but Claudia assures her that there's no hanky-panky.
Claudia
just for appearances.
Views Lewis in the same way that she would do a nice pair of shoes. You have to have all the accessories.
I don't think over the years Claudia had very many proper boyfriends or suitors, didn't
I think she's a very self-sufficient woman.
It was probably quite intimidating as well.
Yeah.
Ken just saw her as the next rung on the ladder.
I think she really genuinely is very self-sufficient and views men as an accessory, but not something integral to her happiness. I think she's,
The reason that Ken probably left number one to go to Still Waters is there's so many notches on his bedpost, it probably just made the bed collapse.
Yeah, it was just like...
it's the final straw.
Just, caved in on itself.
And hopefully he'll get a new one now. He's back in the master bedroom.
He needs to get himself an iron wrought one.
Oh, yeah.
He just soldered something in. Well, you just imagine in the middle of the night, what's that? Well, Ken is just
got another bird home.
Just got the buzzsaw out to put another notch on the old iron bed frame.
2010, Audrey. This was, I think, still Claudia was in and out of it. Especially towards the beginning of the year, at least.
A drug addict.
What?
In and out of the show, not in and out of it, as in consciousness.
No. So they went to a dinner dance together. I expect Rula just enjoyed the chance to dress up and go to fancy do's.
Can you just imagine her accepting the role? Yes, darling, just to check though, it's catered right. I'm not going to be stealing bread rolls like Shelley King.
Controversial, Gemma.
That's a callback.
An accusation.
If you don't know what that, you need to go back quite a few years.
So they went to this dinner dance together where they saw Lewis with Rita. So he's been working his way through all the elderly women of the street, basically.
He's been working his way through Corriepedia.
Yeah. So he, if he's been going through in alphabetical order, or roughly, he's had quite a few, hasn't he? He started at the beginning of the alphabet, and by the beginning of 2010, he's already towards the end. So anyway, Audrey admits to Claudia that she had also been hiring Lewis and has fallen for him.
Oh dear.
Well, who could resist those charms? Claudia tries to make Audrey see that he's just putting on the charms, like you're just a job to him, Aud. But Audrey doesn't believe her. She thinks that it's true love she's found. First true man that she could...
What?
The first man that she could trust in and fall in love with after poor Alfie. And however, Audrey is made to eat her words after he abandons her and goes to Greece. So, score one for Claudia.
I wouldn't be surprised if Claudia is really a Polish countess. Not in the show, obviously, but
we know so little about her backstory.
I know. I still maintain that she was.
It's there. There's something.
There's troubled youth there, and I think she got pregnant when she was young.
Mm.
Anyway.
Oh, go on.
If he's gone off to Greece, I can just imagine that Lewis is secretly a Greek prince.
Yes.
Why not?
Absolutely,
Phil was. Why not him?
So Audrey, later in the year, donates a pedicure and manicure to the Rovers raffle, which Claudia spectacularly outdoes by offering a luxury salon treatment. So that puts Audrey's nose right at her joint, even more so when Audrey ends up winning the luxury salon transplant treatment at Claudia's place. So she has to grin and bear that, I think. Around this time as well, I was interested to see on Corriepedia, there were rumours that Claudia was going to be taking over as landlady of the Rovers Return, because this was when Bev Callard was going off on one of her breaks, and the Rovers needed a new landlady at the helm, and in the press it said that it'd be Claudia rather, and Phil Collinson, the producer at the time, had to deny this. But just imagine that.
Well,
Claudia as
it would have been better than some of the than beige pants, wouldn't it?
It would have been better than Stella, I have to agree. I think that she'd have been awesome. I don't know whether it would have turned into too much like a let's try and make it Annie Walker again, Annie Walker Mark 2, or rather Annie Walker Mark 3 after Lillian Spencer.
No, because the thing about Claudia is she's not putting on a front, is she? Like Annie. But she literally is just being herself, which is just posh as hell.
I think that would have been... I'd have liked to have seen that for a little bit.
Yeah.
Touch of class back to the Rovers.
How dare you? We've got a touch of class in the Rovers.
There's always a chance for a return story if Johnny and Jenny decide to hang up the...
She needs to marry into the Newton and Ridley family and make Henry her
Exactly.
nephew.
This is what we said in the podcast last week, didn't we?
Yes.
Henry, Claudia's new toy boy. Writes itself. Come on, Corrie.
Oh my god.
Take the bait. 2011, Gemma. What did Claudia get up to?
Didn't you... Oh yeah.
I finished
2011, she starts dating widower Mark Selby. He starts counselling their dates, and she thinks that he is having an affair. So Aud and Claude, it's like a detective show on daytime ITV. They have a stakeout at his house, and they see a woman leaving one night. They confront him the next day, and Mark goes, "Oh, it was my sister." And then later on, Audrey discovers Mark is a transvestite, which is the terminology that was used in the time at on the show.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't call him that now. I wouldn't have thought.
Don't you?
Well, there's different terminology used these days, but that
he was a cross-dresser, wasn't he?
I'm not going to get into that now. It's not about. We're not talking about that now. But that's how he described himself, I think. And unlike Audrey, Claudia is not very understanding about.
No, she
this.
thinks that she's been made a mug of, basically. Yeah. I found that story fascinating, and I know a lot of people at the time say it was a bit of a weird one, and having a man dress up as a woman and everything, and it was all a bit farcical. I think that they did it really, really sensitively.
I do as well.
I was just a little bit gutted at the end how I think it ended quite quickly and abruptly. I remember Audrey, I think, revealing to somebody about Mark before he was ready for it to be made public knowledge, and he comes into the Rovers and say it's over between us, and then he was off and we didn't see him again.
Humiliated because it was his it was his secret to keep or not as he saw fit.
And he trusted Audrey
Yeah.
and Claudia, I guess.
I did like Mark. I thought that it was a very complicated story, and as you said, it was a bit more sensitively done than some of the previous times on Coronation Street you'd had.
Well, it was no Ida Fag, was it?
As you say, cross-dressing. Well, also, didn't Steve end up with a...
Oh, yeah, he did, didn't
there was
he?
some very, very
On holidays,
insensitive...
yeah.
I mean, they really did a massively great job with Hayley, which is to say they just treated her as a woman.
Yeah, well, that was different anyway, wasn't it? Because that was about transsexual rather than transvestite.
I know, but I understand.
Yeah,
there's a difference.
I thought it was a great story, and it's nice to see. I like a bit of romance between the elder characters,
Okay.
and I thought they were quite well suited to each other. I was just a bit disappointed, but even though it was understandable, Claudia's reaction at the end. I mean, Audrey was always the main character, and Claudia was the bit part. So if anyone was going to be not understanding of it, I suppose it'd be Claudia. But I suppose it's a natural reaction if you find out that somebody you've been dating has got this massive and, a massive secret that doesn't follow societal norms, I suppose. It's a difficult one to accept.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Anyway, that was the end of Claudia for a little bit. She Rula wanted to leave Coronation Street to focus on theatre for a bit, but the door was left open for her, the stage door, and which is the same as now. She was mentioned quite a bit on and off in the intervening years between 2011 and 2018. So it was almost like. Well, it's like Audrey was still her friends, and she would go off to see her. And even though they had a bit of even though when she left after the Mark debacle, Claudia declared her and Audrey's friendship was over, it seems they made up somehow in the meantime.
I would just call them frenemies.
Yeah, it was great. In 2012, Rita went to Perm Suspect instead of Audrey's one time because I think Audrey's was fully booked, so Audrey was hurt by that, so I think she was probably not friends with Claudia at that point. But then in 2015, Audrey gets drunk with Claudia on her 75th birthday, friends again, and then in 2018, Audrey and Claudia went on a course for the future of hairdressing in the digital age.
I don't think it's going to be much different, is it? You can't cut hair digitally, can you?
No, you need
as we're all discovering.
Yeah, if I could, if somebody's invented that, they'd be onto a winner right now, wouldn't they?
I think they would be.
I'm still going alright at the moment.
2018, Claudia returns to the street to boast about expanding her business, and she's going to open a new shop, and she wants Maria to run it.
I thought it was quite cool that, like, in her later years, she's still sort of hell bent on expanding the Perm Suspect empire. Like, most people would be ready to rest on their laurels.
When you reach 75, nobody told Claudia. Claudia offers to invest. Carla offers to invest in the business for Maria's sake, but she doesn't go on with Claudia. And eventually Rita puts some money in, because I think that Claudia's like, you can work here, you can be in charge of it, but you need to give me money.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be a co-investor. And Maria didn't have any money, and can't remember what Carla was paying for it, but it was did something wrong, didn't she? Or
this was after the whole Carla being out of the factory and everything, wasn't it? And she was back again after going away, and
I don't know.
She needed a kidney.
Don't know. Claudia finds that Audrey is dating Lewis again. Very shocked about that. Then Ken starts to write this book about.
That was
this
funny.
Like love story.
Was it a book or was it a series of short stories?
It was in the newspaper. It was in the paper. It was serialised, and it was about a hairdresser. And Claudia decides to help him with his research by telling him all about Audrey's scandalous past. So she's kind of gossiping to Ken, who just writes it all down.
And I don't think Ken knew that it was Audrey that she was saying about.
I think he thought it was Claudia.
Maybe. I
don't know, but it was about Audrey. And they start a secret relationship.
This was quite controversial at the time, wasn't it? Because this was only 3 years after Deirdre had died, and already there had been the possibility of Ken and Audrey getting together before this as well. There was a
strong hint that it would be Ken and Audrey.
Yeah, that just kind of vanished, really, didn't it? It went nowhere. So it was quite surprising that they decided to try and get it off the ground again, but with Ken and Claudia this time. Who do you think he was most suited to, and the answer can be neither to that
I
one?
don't know. I think he was better suited to Claudia, and I don't think that him and Audrey, they just feel like there's no chemistry. They're just friends to me.
Well, I kind of get that with Ken and Claudia, to be honest. And although I maybe would have been happy for them to have settled down and been a new long-term couple in Coronation Street together, they just didn't feel quite right. And Ken did have ideas above his station, and he wanted to get out of the working class street that he spent the whole of his life in. But
I do think Claudia could have done better.
I think so.
Yeah.
I didn't really feel that they loved each other. I got the sense that they grew to be fond of each other, but when they decided to move into Stillwaters together earlier this year, I was thinking it just doesn't feel like, they're ready for this. And it was the same. Was it? I can't remember whether it was that.
When you're 80 or wherever,
I suppose
you've got to move a bit more quickly, haven't you?
That's true.
You don't have all the time in the world to.
And sometimes it is just about companionship as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Although we know what Ken's like.
You could get a
dog.
dog.
Randy bugger.
Just get another dog. Not for that though. Don't be gross. She announces one of her new shops is going to be in Victoria Street, and Audrey's worrying because her clients are going to start to flock to Claudia's.
This was all about
quite a swanky boudoir.
She was going to have a fancy salon, wasn't she? With was it going to be that was the one that Maria was going to run, I think.
Yeah.
And they quite often they would show. They show sketches or them looking at sketches, and we heard a lot about here's how the development's going on in my salon, but we never get to see any of it.
We kept saying I hope we get to see a set for it.
Yeah, and then it never came to fruition, did it?
Well, we kept thinking how they're going to get out of opening this. They're going to burn it down or something. So Claudia nominates Audrey for the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Northwest Regional Stylist Awards to wind her up, because basically it's like, Lifetime Achievement, it's the end of your career now.
Yeah, it's the awards to celebrate the fact that you've passed it.
You're past it, yeah. I think Audrey takes it in the spirit it was intended, but tries to stage her up as well, and throws a bunch of flowers in her face to say thank you.
That was a classic Audrey scene.
Really,
there.
really funny.
And the mic drop at the end. Love that. They both played it so well. So,
yeah.
And that had a scene with had Emma fawning over Ken's hair. I think
it
was David there as well, snickering as Claudia
Brilliant.
gets a face full of flowers. That was a great old scene. That one was, and just it really showed the relationship between Audrey and Claudia. As you said, the frenemies.
Yeah.
Chemistry that they had.
Maria drops out of the deal with Claudia because she realises that it's not really fair to Audrey, and she should be loyal to her because of how much she's done for her career. Indeed.
Now, throughout all of this, in the second half of 2018, that was when Lewis Archer was back on the cobbles again, and because he started going out with Audrey, didn't he, for that brief time? He was just in it so little when he was back. I don't know whether his and Claudia's paths crossed too much, but I imagine Claudia was telling Audrey, what the hell are you doing going back out with him again? But alas, it didn't last for long, that love, did it?
He expired.
He did, didn't he? Was it New Year's Day 2019? Audrey goes up to that hotel room because she thinks that he's planning to do a bunk because she's found notes in his diary about going off somewhere.
And he was going to go on a
well, everyone was telling her, look, he's trying to...
He's plotting.
Yeah, but she goes up there and finds him with a ring. So she and Claudia kind of co-organised this funeral, and that led to another amazing scene. And I would say underrated.
I was going to say
comedy Claudia and Audrey scene. Everybody remembers the Northwest Styling Awards and the mic drop moment, but I absolutely loved Lewis's funeral.
Yeah.
Well, just in recent years, it's one of my. I would describe it as a sketch. There are certain scenes in Coronation Street that could have come out of a sketch show. I mean, the AA meeting is the most obvious example, but just having all of the other admirers of Lewis there, all the other women in the audience, is that the right word?
Congregation.
And then when the coffin's going down the conveyor belt and they all want to
make it sound like it's Yo Sushi.
It's like the Generation Game. and they're fighting over who's going to press the buttons or something, weren't they? It was very farcical, and I'm sure a lot of people thought it was ridiculous and disrespectful and just silly. But I did enjoy that because I loved Audrey, I love Claudia, I love Lewis Archer. So after this, Audrey starts to think that Claudia had been secretly seeing Lewis because she thought that Claudia was a little bit too sad about the fact that he's dead, and so she thinks, well, maybe she was going out with Lewis, and then Claudia was the one to rob. Now, what was it?
What are you talking about?
I think she thought that Claudia was involved in the money robbing, Archie's money.
I don't.
Audrey got robbed, didn't she, by Butterfly Batgirl?
Yeah.
And Audrey thought that Claudia and Lewis might have been working together for this.
But it was actually David and Butterfly Girl.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, there was another funny scene after Bertie's christening when Beth slags off Claudia over the baby monitor thing.
Yeah.
That was quite funny. And also that had a kind of a sad moment for Claudia because she'd been going out with Ken, and she gets quite upset when Ken publicly says, "Oh, we're just got a platonic relationship, we're just friends," and Claudia had kind of seen it as a little bit more than that. But then after they thrash things out a little bit, they decide to give things a proper go, and she moves in with him. She also pays for Peter to go to rehab.
Very expensive.
Yes. And had a little fight with the Baileys over the noise pollution from number 1. From number 3, I mean.
With Aggie and the boys.
Well, it was when
playing violin and blasting classic music.
That was funny. It was again. That was a bit silly. I thought the hole in the wall story. It was fine. When the Baileys look through the wall and find Claudia and Amy scraping away at the violins, that was quite funny. She also almost gets scammed by Imran last year, the dirty, rotten scoundrel, when he tries to buy her Redwater apartment off of her at a cut-down price because of the bail hostel, which is the weird story
that was so odd. There was supposed to be a bail hostel opening, and it never did. And Imran found out that it was cancelled and tried to buy Claudia's apartment that she's selling cheap. And then Toya found out, and she was like, "You can't do that tomorrow." Yeah,
well, and then that was kind of left with Claudia, Toya and Imran, you're not suited. She's too good for you, kind of thing.
Yeah, and then they went.
And then that dangling thread was left and never really returned to.
Well, they obviously are good for each other because they share a love of aubergines.
And that's almost it for Claudia, apart from this whole Stillwater stuff, which seemed to come out of nowhere a little bit in the 10,000th episode this year, didn't it? One of the early scenes before they get on the coach is Claudia looking on the internet at this retirement place with Ken, and she's got her heart set on moving out because she's fed up of the hustle and bustle of modern life
of Weatherfield and its
and hairdressing
edge.
And she just wants to live it up and relax and do fencing and painting for the rest of her life.
Live in a room with panelled walls.
Yeah.
Which I would as well.
Don't we all want to end up that way?
Me, I do.
So it goes off there, and now she's stayed there because she thinks it's great, and Ken's like, nah.
She's like, well, I mean, I'm going to stay here now. The peanut bowls have gone. There's no reason for me to change anything.
We did get as well this year 1 or 2 brilliant scenes between her and between Claudia and Evelyn as well, didn't we? Because obviously Rula and blimey, what's her name? Maureen Lipman.
You're getting it off me.
They're very chummy, and they share a flat together, or they shared a flat together in Manchester. So it was nice to go see those scenes together where Claudia does Evelyn up for her date with Arthur.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping that scene would be, the first of many, like blossoming of a new relationship and a friendship between two characters on the street, because of their chemistry off screen, it translated wonderfully to those scenes they had together. But alas, it almost feels now like it was we've got to have them have at least one scene together. Yeah, let's give them a scene where she does her hair. We'll cherish that one. So that is the end of Claudia, Gemma.
Oh goodness, I thought she was fabulous.
Do you think that she's going to become, one of the Corrie characters that's liked for the time they're in it, but are quickly forgotten about?
I don't know, because she's been in it she was been in it on and off, wasn't she? And
She had two big stints.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a nice surprise when she came back, because it had been so long since she'd been in it last. I don't think anybody was necessarily expecting her to come back again. And I think that if that first period that she'd been in it had been it,
might not have been so memorable.
No, I've just remembered. I don't think Honor Blackman did play Ruler. I think that might have been someone else that played
Ruler?
her. No, remember I said that Honor Blackman played a character called Ruler. It might have been somebody else that played her. It just popped into my brain. Sorry, continue.
I just
Maybe it
agree
was.
with everything you say.
Yeah. I hope that she'll be remembered, but what was it, 138, 139 episodes? It's not much, is it?
I don't know. I think because she's played by Rula Lenska, who's a bit of an icon in this country. I think it's more difficult to forget, and if she feels a bit more like an extended cameo.
Well, I was going to say, how much to you did the character feel like this is Claudia and not this is, guest starring Rula Lenska?
It just feels like it was Rula Lenska is Claudia Colby.
And the problem is you don't really want that for soaps, do you?
I don't care, I love it.
Soaps are about looking on the lives of real northern folk, and you're supposed to forget about the actors and everything because we've seen these people grow up for the last 60 years odd. But for some reason I didn't particularly mind. But I know what you mean. I never forgot that she was Rula, even though I didn't really know much about Rula Lenska before she even started on Coronation Street. I knew the name.
She's just a bit legendary, isn't she?
Yeah, she is a bit of a ledge. I wonder if she'd had the opportunity to be in the role for longer, I would have not seen her as being a guest.
I think it's great. It's one of the reasons I like her.
I suppose you could say the same thing about Nigel Havers, though, couldn't you?
Yes, I felt the same way about him.
See, I don't know whether I did. I think I thought that Lewis was a bit more of a well-rounded character.
I feel the same way about Evelyn as well, to be frank. I do think that with those three in particular, because they were such big names and they're like household names in the UK, it does feel a bit like, we're so lucky to have them in the show. You know what I mean? I
felt the same with Keith Duffy when he was in it, when he was playing Kieran McCarthy. I never stopped thinking that this is Kieran, this is him off Boyzone in it.
I'll tell you what though, the person I felt the most privileged to watch in Coronation Street and really humbled as a viewer was Sarah Harding. I can't believe we got Sarah Harding.
Thought you were going to say something like, Michelle Collins or Kim Marsh there. I definitely, say what you like about Michelle, and we certainly did, but I did think that she did a good job of evolving from that girl out of Hearsay. Because when she came into it, I was like, what's she doing? She's just a pop star. She doesn't deserve to be on this programme. But I thought that even though I didn't like the character, I think that she definitely made the role her own. Kim did over the course of those years.
You've also missed off another really big name that I would say a vocal minority on Twitter never took to in the show, and that's Les Dennis, who came in.
That's very true, actually.
And sort of already had a big household name. And some people never got over.
No, whereas I did really, really quickly, because when it was announced that he was going to be on it, I remember being taken a bit back by this. I think I was willing to give it a chance, but it's like he's just a game show host, isn't he? But almost immediately, it was like, blimey, he's Michael Rothwell. He is.
He's really good. I love him so much.
Yeah. But I wouldn't say that means necessarily that Les Dennis is a better actor than Rula Lenska, just because I was still not able to forget that it was Ruler.
It's partly the role that they were given. Like, Les Dennis to me was given, as the role of Michael Rodwell, a permanent character's part that's like a normal character on Corrie, whereas Rula Lenska's Claudia Colby really was it's Rula Lenska in Coronation Street. Who would Rula Lenska be if she lived in Weatherfield? She would be Claudia Colby, owner of a chain of fabulous hair salons.
I wonder whether Roy Hudd was a little bit like that as well, and I don't know much about him pre-Coronation Street, but Archie Shuttleworth could well have been, a slight take on just what Roy was like in real life. But he was definitely Archie Shuttleworth before he was Roy Hudd to me, because I didn't particularly know him before. And another one who did a good job of getting away from the what's he doing on Coronation Street job with Shane Ward
Yeah.
as well. And another one who came into it, it's like, oh, he's got an X Factor winner on Coronation Street, but he certainly changed a lot of minds by the end of it.
It's quite interesting as well how many of these get killed off.
Yeah, very, very true, actually. So do you think there is going to be any future for Claudia? Do you think she'll even get talked about the same way that she was?
I really hope so, because I feel really shortchanged by her exit. I don't know if there were different plans or anything, but it feels as though she kind of got rushed out. But then that's what they do, isn't it, with characters when they're done with them, they sort of disappear into nothing.
Yeah, I mean, she was talked about in between her other stints because she was still the friend and rival of Audrey, and they still were able to meet up and all that. But I mean, I don't know whether I just missed it or whether it hasn't really been delved into much on the show. But what's going on with Claudia and her businesses that she owns? Because she does still co-own the salon with Maria. Is it? Yeah, it's Claudia and Maria own the salon, and Audrey owns Trim Up North. It's just ridiculous. They just need to do a swap, have Audrey own Audrey's again, but Maria, because Maria doesn't even work in the salon, she works at it's stupid.
It is a bit.
It's very, so that maybe this will be an opportunity, because I would have thought that Claudia doesn't want, I don't know, will she just want the money? I mean, can she sell the perm suspect business to Maria or Audrey or something?
I don't know.
Because if you're living in Stillwaters, you don't need to have a hair
Well, she
chain
probably still
anymore.
gets income from owning it.
Oh no, yeah, maybe she does.
Pays for all those exorbitant peeing on the carpet fees that she doesn't have to worry about anymore, actually.
That's true. That is absolutely true.
Although Norris is in charge now, so I can only assume that the amount of petty fines and stupid rules
only go up. I was a bit sad that we didn't get to see a final scene between her and Audrey in the end.
I know.
There was nothing, was there? If Last Friday's was her final scene, a bit bizarre that it was her and Tracy that got to share the scene together. Because
Also,
even the stuff with her and Ken was kind of nice. It dragged on a little bit, but it was quite bittersweet in a way. But it could have been a better ending for her than what she actually got. But seriously, we needed Claudia and Audia to have a scene together. That owed it.
I know. Well, we can only assume she'll be back. I don't know.
I mean, she could come back for the odd cameo, couldn't she?
I think it'd be nice.
I think it'd be lovely, but
I'm sure Maureen would let her stay in her flat.
Yes,
She
exactly.
needs to pop up.
Exactly.
Do some filming.
So, Ken is now a free man once more.
Oh,
Is he going to go back to
Free
Audrey?
agent. Don't know. Is he going to find some more totty somewhere else?
I kind
Is
of
he going to go after Evelyn?
don't want him to.
No,
They
no.
had a go with him and Audrey and it didn't work out. They had a go with him and Claudia, and to me it didn't quite feel right.
Can't he try celibacy for a bit? The randy old bugger.
I think he might have to. I think he might just have to grow old gracefully and
Never.
retire his pair of pulling pants.
We'll see.
We'll see. It wouldn't surprise me if they tried to get them back together, I'll say that. Maybe bring back Wendy Flame and Crozier again.
Why not?
Move
She's
in
always
on that,
good for a roll in
or
the
old
hay, isn't
Martha on the boat.
she? Oh yeah, Martha.
Once he gets his urge again. Right. Any other final words on Claudia before we finish?
But if we are going to bring another bit of Totty back for Ken, it has to be the Lummers. And
We have to
saying
get
this.
Joanna Lumley back.
Joanna Lumley needs to come back for the 60th
60th.
anniversary because she used to be one of Ken's girlfriends, and really you can see why William Roach has never left Coronation Street, because they keep giving him really hot birds to date on screen.
Yeah, he's probably just hanging on in there for them to bring back Joanna Lumley.
Yeah, it's probably in his contract somewhere.
We'll just have to wait and
We'll
see.
have to see if they
Have
get
to see
Lummers.
where it moves. Anyway, that's Claudia.
Yeah,
Miss her, now she's gone.
I know.
But
I do.
enjoyed her while she lasted.
Yeah,
Uh,
burned brightly. Like a flame.
Indeed, yeah. do write in and let us know if you've got any other final comments that you'd like to make about Claudia.
Yes.
Gemma,
Oh.
where can people write in?
You
if
can
they want to
email
tell
us at conversationstreet@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at conversationstreet. You can find us on Spotify and iTunes.
Yeah, but you
and
can't
Podbean.
contact us through
You can't
Spotify or
contact us.
iTunes.
You can find us on Facebook, and we've also got a Facebook group that is quite fun to join if you would like to. And we're also on Patreon.
Yes. Thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Thank
Hope you
you.
enjoyed reliving some of Claudia's finest moments.
Yes.
We'll be back next week for more Conversation Street. So until then, ta-ra for now.
Goodbye. Hello everyone and welcome to our YouTube upload of our character profile of Sunita Alahan from episode 34 of Conversation Street, the Coronation Street podcast.
Yes, we've decided to upload this week because Sunita's had a few mentions in the show
She's
recently.
got a shout out.
She is, and she's either looking down proudly
Or
at
up.
Asher at the moment, or up, yeah, or in disgrace. I don't know, but it's always nice for Sunita to get a bit of a
What
mention.
would Sunita think of all the trials and tribulations that her dear daughter has been going through?
Well, I mean, Dev was talking recently. He was talking in tonight's episode that we watched, because we just watched Wednesday's episode, about like, oh, I'm not white than white either, Asher. I've got a bit of a past. Sunita's still coming across as a bit of an angel in this, and lest we forget that she had a bit of a dalliance with Carl Monroe before her exit.
How can you help it when you're such a looker? Go spread yourself about a bit.
So we talk in this character profile a little bit about Sunita's 2 periods on the street, and how the first time she was quite lovely and innocent and pure, and then she came back as a bit of a minx, and how we didn't particularly like her
Who
so
has
much at
more
the end.
fun?
But I have appreciated what we've seen of Dev's parenting since her death, because he's had to be a single father raising these 2 twins. He's not even shipped them up to Scotland or anything.
I know.
So he's already got one over Kambala with this. But yeah, he's been desperately trying to do the right thing as a father in the last however many years it is, 6, 7, 8 years since Anita's been out of the picture.
Tough, you know. He has done a bit of co-parenting with Mary.
Oh yeah, with
but,
Mary. Yeah,
I think
and even Stella get her.
I think we can definitely give the credit for a lot of the raising of the twins to Mary, but perhaps Dev should have been a bit more engaged as a parent. Don't want to cast
Maybe.
aspersions, but
Maybe. Well, he's still got a bit of time, hasn't he? They're not
I
grown up
don't,
yet.
I don't know. This maybe a couple of
Maybe
years.
this is going to be a wake-up call for him.
I think so. Anyway, we're not talking about Asha. We're talking about Sunita, and here is our character profile of her. Is this is after she died? So this is the entire.
No, I think this was was after she got burnt in the fire, but she wasn't quite dead yet. And I don't know whether we knew when we recorded it that she was gonna die, or whether we were just pretending we didn't know she was gonna die.
She's dead.
Spoiler.
Who she
Enjoy.
died? She got killed, didn't she?
Yeah, she got killed by Carl at the end. He turned
Yeah.
off a breathing machine.
Naughty. Goodbye, everybody. Enjoy.
It's character profile time.
It is, and who else could we do this week apart from Sunita Alahan, who has been kind of important in this week's episodes. She was
Who's
born.
been lazing about, as far as I can tell.
She has done a lot of lazing about
lying
this
on the
week.
floor.
She was born in 1978 to Suresh Parekh and Meena Parekh, and she has a brother called Jayesh. Of course, she
Married.
She was married to Dev in 2004 in a nice little Hindu ceremony that we talked a bit about. I think it was last week's episode. And then in 2006, she gave birth to twins, Adi and Asha. She first appeared on the 21st of March 2001, so she's been in it almost exactly 12 years.
That's quite good, isn't
Maths
it?
on the fly there. And yeah, she was. Not almost, because she was in it from 2001 to 2006, and she got fired, and then she was back in it again.
Fired.
Sacked. Dismissed.
Fired.
But then she, fired, yeah.
Oh.
She got fired this week. She was back in it again in 2009 to 2013. She's been in over 700 episodes, and she is, of course, played by the lovely Shobna Gulati, who's now a host on Loose Women.
Well, what can you say about that?
Yeah. So, I remember when Sunita came into the programme, which was probably about a year, 6 months before you started watching it, before I started to force you to watch it. There'd been some Indian families on the street in the couple of years before this. Vikram Desai had been in
Vikram.
it. His sister Neeta, who I quite like, was in it for a little bit. And their dad, I think it was their dad or uncle or someone, Ravi, who I actually thought was quite funny, but he wasn't in it very long. And then
when Sunita was announced, there was a bit of criticism from the press because the way that she was brought in was through an arranged marriage storyline, and a lot of people.
She was escaping it, wasn't she?
Yeah, she had a marriage arranged for her, and she was trying to get away from it, and people thought that was a bit of a stereotypical kind of storyline for an Indian girl to come in with, but. Well, at the time, Gulati said, it was very brave to explore an issue a lot of people consider to be untrendy, but it's prevalent and part of our culture.
Untrendy.
Untrendy.
I'm not having an untrendy arranged marriage. Really losers.
No, you knew someone who... Did they have an arranged marriage, or were they going to have an arranged marriage?
When I was at school, I had a friend, and she was... she told us all that she had an arranged marriage. Her parents had planned an arranged marriage for her. And so immediately being over... excited teenage girls, because it was an all-girls school I went to, we all started going, we'll help you escape. And she's like, no way, I'm really excited, he's really hunky. And she was really excited about it because he was apparently quite a catch.
Oh, well.
So it's not always a bad thing.
Well, no, Sunita didn't like it, so
it's up to everyone to decide for themselves.
Oh yeah, this isn't the place to debate the pros and cons of arranged marriage.
It must be quite good to have it taken care of so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, God, arranging a marriage is... So
that is quite tricky, isn't it?
It is. It took us long enough to get around to it. So this was in 2001 when she came in, and she was hiding out with Dev, who I think was her boss at the time, although she didn't work in the Coronation Street shop then, obviously.
Obviously.
She was arranged to be married to this guy called Deepak, and her parents caught up with her, and she thought she was just sort of had pre-wedding nerves, and that she was eventually...
going to go through with it.
Yeah. But she was a strong, independent woman, and she wanted to live her own life. But Dev offered her a job in his shop and the flat above, so she was still kind of under the control of Dev in some way early on. Although didn't start seeing him straight away. The first person that she had a bit of a fling with was Dougie Ferguson. So had a thing for the older men even back then.
How older is Dev than Sunita then?
I do not know.
I just thought they were the same age.
No, I think Dev's probably a little bit older, and Carl must be.
How old is Dougie Ferguson then?
I do not know.
Well, why are you making comments?
They were
about
definitely.
Older
he was
men
definitely older. I remember when they first started seeing each other, and I was like, "What?"
Ages.
No, I'm not very good at that. Yeah, but as we all know what happened to Dougie Ferguson, do we?
Yeah, I do.
What?
He fell in a pit.
Yeah, pretty close. He nearly.
Happened?
You were watching it a little bit. You definitely saw it because I showed you this episode.
Remember.
That was Richard Hillman's first victim.
He pushed him down a hole.
No, he wasn't in a hole. He was up.
He pushed him up a hole.
No, shut up. He was in a big newly developed building, I think it was, or a flat or
That's
something.
Right. Yeah, you get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he went over the banister.
Yeah, he did. I remember that. Pushed him over the banister when he fell down the stairwell.
I don't think he pushed him. I think he kind of slipped and tumbled over and was holding on, and Richard left him to die. So
did he do that thing like in The Lion King where he put his paws in his and went rah, and he
live the king.
Got trampled by wildebeest.
It was quite like that, yeah.
Cool.
So some people are debating whether Richard Hillman actually killed Dougie Ferguson or whether he just left him to die. But in any way, that was the first thing where we started.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, exactly. Very exciting. Well, bad for Sunita especially because.
In 2002, that's when he died.
Yes, untimely.
But it's okay because she latched onto Dev.
Yes. Well, yeah, for a little bit anyway. But then Kieran McCarthy showed up in 2003.
What a catch!
Yeah. Well, I never really grew to like Kieran. He was Keith Duffy.
Right, I didn't like him either. He's a bit cheesy for me.
He was really cheesy, and. My sister used to really, really like Boyzone, which is a band that Keith was in. So there were always like posters of him up on her wall and stuff. And yeah.
Did she like him?
I don't think so.
He's a bit of a weird looking bloke, if you ask me. I wouldn't if you said to me, what do you think of this guy? I'd say, well, he's not unattractive. But if you tell me he's hunky, then I'll start to criticise him. Because he's not, is he? He's just a normal looking bloke.
Yeah, I could never see him as anyone other than Keith Duffy, and he wasn't.
He's not brilliant at acting.
No, it's fair to say, but he managed to woo Sunita for a bit
because she didn't know.
Well, no, but he was later arrested that year because he was brought into the programme as one of Peter's Navy mates, but it turned out that he'd gone AWOL from the Navy, and then they caught up with him and they sent him back to Portsmouth.
Oh, what a fate.
Fate worse than death going to Portsmouth, as we say here in Southampton. Sorry, I think we may have listener in Portsmouth.
Sorry. They know what this is about. It's all banter, isn't it?
Banter, yeah.
It's just banter.
Southampton, Portsmouth banter.
We have a rivalry in case the rest of the world didn't know that.
No, I think this was the time when, if I'm remembering rightly, Dev was going to propose to Sunita, or Sunita, they were having a meal or something, I remember, up in the flat in the... up above the corner shop, and then just at this romantic moment, Kieran comes bursting in later on in the end. He's like, "Oh, I'm back, so I am."
I was avoiding the Irish accent.
Oh, I know. Well, we need to do Jim McDonald's character profile, don't we? And then we'll
Then
never
you can
avoid
bust it out, can't you?
Yeah. So then he proposed to Sunita during Peter and Shelley's wedding. And
Another one that doesn't know when not to upstage people.
no, I know. Why can't you just have a proposal?
Why can't you just do it yourself and
Yeah.
then tell everybody and have a party?
Rather than spoiling, yeah.
Someone else's party.
Like Chesney. Well, she
Anyway.
accepted because she was obviously caught up in the romance of it. But it turned out she realised that he wasn't actually that much into her and he didn't love her, and he probably was kind of jumping the gun a bit by proposing to her. I think he told someone, I can't remember, that he actually was feeling a bit unsure about marrying Sunita, and then she managed to find out. So she jilted him on their wedding day, which I was very, very pleased with, because I always knew that Sunita and Dev were made for each other. He tried to, that's right, he tried to get arrested to avoid the wedding, so he punched Dev on the day before the wedding or something, but I think he was released.
Didn't work.
Any excuse to get out of it.
That is what you call desperation.
Yes, Desperation Street. Sunita, briefly... Danny Baldwin, that was another one. He was older than Sunita, wasn't he?
You got to say, it's 2004.
2004.
Sunita briefly dates Danny Baldwin until she realises that he's already married.
That is what our notes say. Yeah, he was married to Frankie, wasn't he?
Yes. Who isn't a man.
No. Dev, at that time, had started dating Maya.
Yay!
He was a lawyer. She was a lawyer. And
she was crazy.
Yeah, she was very crazy. I don't think she was so crazy right at the beginning, but she started getting crazy.
I think she had to have always been crazy, don't you think?
She was crazy in the same way that maybe Kirsty's been crazy since the beginning.
I think you have to have something wrong with you to have gone as nuts as both these ladies have.
Well, that was a bit of a tragic year for Sunita because she got an aneurysm and a brain tumour. Sucks. And
whammy.
Yeah, she collapsed on the shop floor, and then Dev was obviously had to then concerned. He looked after her and he was fussing around her a little bit too much for Maya's liking. So she
sued him.
She got very, very jealous of him, and then eventually her suspicions proved to be correct because he did indeed dump her for Sunita. Now, there was a good revenge from Maya. She went away for a bit, and then I remember she came back and she was marrying all these illegal immigrants under the name of Sunita Parekh.
Do you mean that she was actually marrying them, or she was arranging for them to get married?
No, she actually married them.
I don't know if you meant she was lawyering.
No. She married them, but she didn't give a real name. She gave Sunita's name.
Maybe she just really likes wedding dresses because they are lovely, and I would wear another one if I could.
I think they were all pretty cheap weddings, just so that they could stay in the country.
Yeah, no, but if I was
immigrants.
getting paid for it, I'd spend a bit of it on a dress.
Well, during Sunita and Deb's wedding later in 2004, cops turn up and arrested Sunita because it's like, you're already married lots of times. And then when Sunita was released, Maya kidnapped her, chained her up above the corner shop, and then set her on fire.
Wow, that sounds familiar.
Thus commences Sunita's long history with nearly being burned to death in Coronation Street.
Yep.
But good old Charlie Stubbs rescued her.
He's a good guy, that Charlie Stubbs.
Yeah, what a nice chap he was. In 2005, Sunita temporarily fell out with Shelley, and I remember they were quite close mates back then. Because
close as Gail and Sally?
Oh, yeah, easily. Sunita was trying to convince Shelley to get rid of Charlie, who actually
wasn't. He was a bit of a bumhole.
He wasn't actually that nice whatsoever. He was very controlling, but Shelley...
Abusive.
That was like the original domestic abuse storyline, wasn't it? But Shelley was kind of too scared to leave him, so fell out with Sunita. And then, that was also the year that Sunita discovered that Dev was the father of 4 children. That was also when viewers discovered as well, because they suddenly decided to write him in, having all these children that he'd fathered by people who either worked in his shop or they were just these girls who he then gave shop jobs. Yeah. And that was, I think, that was
empire of illegitimate children in corner shops.
Yeah, that might have been when Amber kind of
it
first started sniffing around.
Well, she appeared, didn't she?
Yeah. Now, that put a dampener somewhat on the fact that at that time Sunita had just felt pregnant with...
Don't say fell pregnant.
Become pregnant with twins. And she walked out on him. In 2006, early on in the year, she gave birth to the twins Adi and Asha, but she left Weatherfield to get away from Dev. He went, "Oh, Sunita!"
They divorced off screen.
Yes, but they remained in contact. So that was when they were she was axed by Tony Wood, who was the producer back then. He was a bit of an axe man, not on the same level as Brian Park, but he did get rid of Janice Battersby, which was a bit of a shame. I would love Janice to come back. She was great. It was a shame they got rid of her.
We don't need her now though, because they got Beth.
No, we need Janice Battersby so she can see Stella off. It's like, hey, I'm Leanne's mum.
I would love to have them have a fight
over
Leanne.
Awesome.
I would love it so much. That would be an excellent storyline.
Yeah. He also got rid of Jessie Jackson, who was one of the twins that wasn't actually twins that worked in the factory. There's the larger girl and the less larger girl.
That was weird.
Yeah. But Kim Crowther reintroduced Sunita in 2009.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Well, I always liked Sunita, and when she left the first time, I was quite disappointed because how they've turned her into these last few years, the loose woman, has gone against a lot of what she was before, which was sort of very nice, very homely, quite kind of calm and lovely and a good mum. And it was a shame when they brought her back and they turned her into this super bitch.
It's funny that you admire those traits in Sunita when I have none of them myself.
Well, you can't be a good mum because you're not a mum.
No, I know, but I'm not
nice
and homely, am I?
Yes.
Well, I'm not an evil seductress like Sunita became. Not that you know about, anyway.
Go on.
2009, this is when she was reintroduced because Dev had to track her down.
Yeah.
He discovered that she was engaged to rich guy Matt Davis.
Yeah, this was when Dev and Steve were having all their golfing larks together, and I think Matt Davis was somebody who was at the golfing club, and he saw him with Asha and Adi, and was like, "Oh, what are you doing with my children?" So that's how Sunita came back into it. That would be a bit confusing,
don't you think? If you're out with your kids with this random man.
Yes, that did lead to some very funny stuff though with Sunita's aunts Grishma and Upma. Because
I like them.
Yeah, they were hilarious. They were only in it for like 10, 15 episodes or so, but I hope they come back. They should come back.
Well, I'm getting now, are they?
They might do.
Why?
I don't know. So yeah, Sunita and Dev had to convince them that they were still married.
Yeah, because they were very traditionalists, weren't they? And they didn't like to think that they had split up and they get too much hassle over it.
Yeah, so they had to pretend and like Dev was sleeping on the floor and Sunita was sleeping in the bed. It was very, very funny. But anyway, they got back together in the end because Sunita realised that Dev was actually a good father to the twins when he was borrowing them, whatever the term is. So they got back together and they bought number 7 Coronation Street from Maria. Later that year, Sunita accused Claire of neglecting Adi, who was knocked unconscious while she was babysitting him. But it was Simon in the end. I think he'd fallen off a chair.
Git.
Yeah, and he was like covering it up. And he was like, "Oh no, Mum, it was me. I'm so sorry."
And everyone was like, "Oh, Simon's so cute."
Yeah, so Sunita was pretty vile to Claire. I
remember that.
I guess you might
forgive
her for it.
Well, they weren't very happy about it, were they?
Who? The Peacocks? No, they didn't. They weren't having any of it. They did not accept the apology. And then, that wasn't the worst thing that happened to the Alahan family that year, because on that fateful night on December 2006, a little tram crash happened. Oh, 2010.
A tram crashed?
Tram crashed, yeah, and it went into the corner shop. And
it caught on fire.
It did. And Sunita was trapped in the flames again. But luckily she got out eventually. I think she had to be rescued. Who rescued her, was it?
Well, it wasn't really...
It was Steve or someone. It was one of the guys.
Sexist.
Yeah, leaving Molly in there. She wasn't quite so lucky,
no
was she?
No one cares about Molly.
No.
Yeah, so that's that.
Yeah, that is
She
that.
was discovered by Becky,
Yeah, oh, that was...
who was there looting.
Yes. Yeah, oh, that was good. 2007, the shop was nearly ruined. Not ruined in the physical sense, because that already kind of happened when the tram went into it. But it turns out that Dev wasn't insured.
I can't believe that. I think it's like pretty important, isn't it? You have to... I don't know, I guess people break laws all the time, don't they?
Especially in
naughty,
soaps.
Naughty people.
Yeah, he wasn't insured. The safe was looted by Becky, so they didn't have any money at all. But she later returned the money. But Steve took the blame for her. Oh, what a nice husband he was. I wouldn't do that for you. Grishma...
Yeah, because I would have spent it on shoes.
Grishma and Utma returned for a little bit, trying to search for a husband for Sunita, which led Dev to propose to her. Oh. In 2012, this was when Amber came back into it. And talking of changing personalities of people in that
Amber
family,
used to be really nice.
she was she was really cool, Amber. But she came back from university. Had she quit university?
She was a little scrote when she came back. She had dropped out, I think. She
Yeah.
couldn't handle it because nobody on Coronation Street can get a degree apart from Ken.
Can't even get A-levels or barely even GCSEs on Coronation Street.
Has Ken got a degree?
Yeah, I think so.
Who else has got a degree? Nobody. Dr. Carter, I presume.
Brian Packham must have a degree.
Yeah, that's true. No, not necessarily. I don't know
Why?
how old he is. He didn't used to have a degree.
Didn't you? Well,
No.
I expect he has. He's quite educated. So Amber came back and she did not get on with Sunita at all, because Sunita by this time was certainly turning into super bitch herself anyway. So these personalities clashed somewhat.
Amber was leeching off her dad quite a lot, really, and when Dev bought her a car for her 21st birthday, that really peed Sunita off, because not only did she not really deserve it as far as Sunita was concerned, but I don't think Dev's asked Sunita first, did he? I think he just bought it.
Yeah, and I think the Alahan family finances still weren't in a brilliant state at that time anyway. So she took her revenge by going to work at the Rovers. She was like saying, I'm independent. And that's when the affair with Carl started, which was a bit of a silly storyline last year.
Bobbins.
Well, we say it was Bobbins, but if you look back at all these other older men that Sunita has had flings with, maybe it's a bit more believable now. And then she kicked Amber out, didn't she? Or
she got rid of Amber, really. Amber left. I don't think she's coming back.
No, I don't think so now. So she had this affair with Carl. It was discovered. Dev was willing to take her back because he obviously at that time still had really, really strong feelings for Sunita, despite what she'd turned into. But stupidly, she stayed with Carl. But the relationship didn't really keep its spark for very much longer, did it?
No, really not very long at all.
For most of last year, they were arguing, or she was working and he was lounging around on the coach, or fire alarms.
Would have come in handy
Would have come in very handy recently. Yeah, but it was a silly relationship. It was never going to work, and it didn't, because earlier on this year she split up with Carl, and we've just recently seen the relationship with Dev beginning to improve. So that was
rekindling their romance.
Yes, that is Sunita.
But Sunita doesn't think she's good enough for him.
No.
Well, she's not really.
No.
But then again, there's no great catch.
Yeah, so she's been in it for, what would we say, 12 years? There's been a time of highs and lows.
Well, it's been a game of two halves, if you're going to use metaphors and cliches, because first bit that she was in it, she was nice, and then she came back as a cow. Been very likeable.
What do you think about all the controversy that there is about when they bring in ethnic minority families into Coronation Street? Do you think there should be
more?
Do you think there should be more?
Well, it shouldn't be a thing. There shouldn't be a black character.
No.
There shouldn't be a Indian family. It should be.
It is only one street, and I don't know what the what the proportion of.
Well, if you're going by Birmingham, there's quite a lot of Indian families and Asian families that live there.
Yeah, well, the Dev's supposed to be from Birmingham originally, but I don't know what it's like in Manchester. But it's nice that we get to see some people about different cultures, and like I said,
so they're definitely a Hindu family, are they?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are.
Need to have a Muslim family in it, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember whether there are any Muslims in it at the moment. But like we said last week when we were talking about religion on Coronation Street, you don't want it to be too much in your face anyway.
Well, this is the problem.
I wish they wouldn't make a big deal about it.
About bringing, when they were saying about Sunita coming in, having a
arranged marriage
storyline, it's like people didn't like it because it's because there's only one Indian character in it, she kind of represents everybody. So people are going to take not take kindly to her having stereotypes like that and negative things being thrown on their culture and stuff.
Yeah, I guess if they were to introduce lots and lots of Asian characters, then it would start to be unrealistic, or that they were trying too hard.
Well, no, it's not realistic, depending on what, where you put your street down, where you want to go. Because there are places where there's quite a lot of Asian families because they like to live together. Yeah. Because I would. If I lived in a foreign country, I'd want to hang around with English people probably. I know people get criticised for it, but you can understand why. Yeah. It's just being part of a community, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
It's not necessarily exclusive of everybody else. No. But no, you can't have everybody in Coronation Street being Asian to be politically correct. No. I don't think that would work out. Right. It'd be nice to have some more Asian families.
Yeah, as long as just not just being stereotypical ones. But they should be brought in because of the quality of the actor, not because to make a statement.
Yeah, but you see, you get a good character, you've got to have a family.
Well, I would like to campaign for Grishma and Utma to come back.
Yeah.
As proper full-time characters.
That'd be awesome, because they could hang out with like Rita and that lot.
Oh man, that would be brilliant.
And then they could introduce some things about their culture.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. I found an interesting fact about, I can't remember whether it was Grishma or Utma, but one of them played Deb's aunt back at the beginning. Didn't you? Yeah, she was only in it for like 2 episodes, and that was not long after Dev came in, so that was before Sunita was even around, I think. But yeah, so I think if you need an Indian aunt character, that is the actress to go to. So maybe we'll see her again sometime, even if she's not in the same role.
Maybe I'll hire her to be my Indian aunt.
Right.
For all kinds of events. Weddings, christenings, parties, birthdays.
Anything else?
No.
Hi everyone, welcome to our character profile of Albert Tatlock. This is from Conversation Street, episode 106, I think. Very long time ago since we did this one. But we brought him up this week because he has been mentioned in the show, so I thought it was good time as any to help let the new viewers of Coronation Street find out a little bit more about who is that man behind the lollipop stick. Who's the man in the photograph that was so cruelly dropped?
But by those horrible teenagers.
Yes. Have they got no respect?
They don't at all.
Tell you what, Albert Tatlock would not have liked the idea that children were having a rave up in his old house.
No, certainly not. He's revolving in his grave.
So this was recorded sort of within the first couple of years of the podcast, so 2014, I'm going to say. When
I had not seen anything with Albert Tatlock in it at this point.
No, you hadn't. But I re-listened to it this afternoon. We actually had quite a nice discussion about it and come up with an idea about an Albert Tatlock spin-off that we'd quite like to see. And it made me think, yes, that would be good, actually. But we were talking about him then because it was the centenary of the beginning of the First World War. So it was very relevant at the time. I hope you enjoy. Oh, by the way, you say at the time you hadn't seen any Albert Tatlock, but now we have.
Oh, yeah.
And interestingly, I still wouldn't say that he's, made a huge impression on us.
No, but we've heard that he has not been well represented in the selections on the 60s and 70s, particularly the 70s discs that we're watching. So
yeah, we've had a few conversations online with David from Corriepedia, who is a massive Albert Tatlock fan, and he said it wasn't his best work on the episodes that are on there. So I'm still waiting to see some real classic Albert Tatlock moments. I think we may have to for that. But anyway, still really fascinating character, and one who had a really well developed backstory from his times in World War One and then during the Great Depression and everything. So if you like that sort of thing, if you're into your history, then hopefully you'll enjoy this. So here he is, Albert Tatlock from episode 106. Enjoy.
It's Tatlock time. Classic character profile. We're going to do Albert Tatlock. Good old Uncle Albert this week. I thought that it was going to be a kind of important running through the week, but you did get a good couple of name checks on Monday's episode. So we thought it'd be worth, as it is the centenary of World War One starting this weekend, we would go back and look at Corrie's old veteran from the war.
Yep, he was born on the 10th of August 1895 and he died on the 14th of May 1984. And his parents were William and Evelyn Tatlock. I like that name.
Emmeline.
It's nice.
Yeah.
He had a brother called Alfred Tatlock and a wife called Bessie Vickery. And they were married in 1919 and he had a child, Beatty Tatlock in 1933. First appeared on the 9th of September 1960.
No, he didn't. There was no Coronation Street there. 9th of December 1960.
What did I say?
You said September.
And he last appeared on the 25th of January 1984.
Yeah, he was in 1,307 episodes in total, which makes him the 37th most featured character. And he was played by the legendary actor Jack Howarth. So Albert was obviously in Corrie right from the very beginning, and he was created by Tony Warren because bosses, he wasn't one of Tony's original ideas. Bosses wanted there to be kind of an old gentlemanly figure because there was more kind of younger people, there was parents and children and that. And of course, well, there was Annie Walker as well and the women for the old characters, but they wanted an old man to go play against them, a character of age, charm and distinction. And I think if people remember how Albert was, particularly towards the end, he certainly was not a charming, distinguished kind of bloke. He was just a grumpy old codger.
Yeah,
but he did start off that way. He started off nice.
And then we get more and more grumpy. I can feel myself happening right now. Like this morning, I was so happy, and now I want to kill everybody. And I can only imagine that process just gets amplified throughout your life.
Yeah, well, that's what happened to him. In the dry run of episode 1, he was played by Victor Tandy, but eventually the role went to Howarth, who had played a number of theatre and radio roles, including a 14-year run as Mags in Mrs. Dale's Diary.
I love Mrs.
Whatever
Dale's Diary. It's like Adrian Mole's diary, but it's about a woman. He became the second longest running character of the original cast.
Which is quite good for someone who's kind of was like an older character, isn't it? Because you would have thought that the younger ones would have lasted the course more, but no.
Nope. So he was born, as we said, in 1895 off screen in Weatherfield and educated at Bessie Street School.
I always think it's funny that Bessie Street was around for so long and it's still the school that children go to now in Weatherfield.
Do you think so?
Well, yeah, I don't know how many schools run for that long. I mean, the school that I teach at was around back then, but I don't know, I think it's quite nice.
Because Ludlow School up the road, that's even got a separate entrance for girls and boys, isn't it?
Oh, yeah,
that's true. In 1906, his parents died of tuberculosis, and he began working at Hardcastle's mill to pay the rent and lodgings and to support little Alfred. His uncle and aunt, who lived at number 1 Coronation Street, took partial responsibility for them. Well, that's a bit harsh.
Apparently,
well, whatever he does is good, that's because of me, but if he does anything bad, I don't know.
Apparently they provided them with at least 1 hot meal a week. Things were different in those days. This is all backstory that was either invented during the programme or by the books that Darren Little and that wrote.
You couldn't even get away with giving prisoners 1 hot meal a week, could you? You'd be in the Human Rights Court.
I know.
In 1914, he signed up to Lancashire Fusiliers when the Great War broke out. Whilst in France, he grew fond of undermaid Bessie Vickery, and they wrote to each other throughout the war. How did he end up knowing who bloody undermaid Bessie Vickery was from France?
I think she was somebody who was in the house that they stayed at there.
In France?
Yeah, in the war.
Was she got shipped over there?
I don't know. I guess so.
They wrote to each other throughout the war, and he also stayed in touch with Ina Lowe, who became Ina Sharples, and stayed with her family during his leave, but they never became a couple as she was mourning her fiancé.
In 1916, he was ordered over the top. He went into the war like many soldiers did there, kind of full of the ideas of these glorious wars of the past and how it's going to be amazing to fight for their country and have a jolly good time on the battlefield.
They all went together, didn't they, in big groups of like neighbourhoods and family and friends, and it was very tragic.
Well, that's what they talk about in the Blackadder episodes, isn't it? About, especially in the last one, where they're talking about going there with all their friends and everything, and it's going to have a jolly old time. But actually, when they get ordered over the top, as in Blackadder, things aren't quite so spiffy, because he was shot in the thigh and left with a piece of shrapnel in his leg, which I think was removed in 1970 something in an episode.
And his friend Quinny got shot.
No, not Quinny. Clary got shot and died in Albert's arms. After recovering, Albert returns to fight as a Lance Corporal, and he'd been awarded the Military Medal for saving the lives of these two fellow soldiers. I don't know who these two fellow soldiers were, I didn't write that down, but he did save some people's lives, and that's the medal that Tracy flogged this week.
Naughty Tracy. I can't believe people went through this. Can you believe this really happened?
No.
It just doesn't seem real, does it? It's
Not
horrible.
at all.
In 1918, he returned to Weatherfield with his friend Dinky,
Dinky Low.
whose wife Madge had died after giving birth to a stillborn child. Dinky arranged for Albert to have the tenancy of number 1 when he married Bessie, who he had proposed to by letter during the war.
How romantic. Well, they married in 1919 in October, and also that year was when he made his first visit to the Rover's Return.
None of this has happened on the street yet. We have to just make this clear, because I'm reading this going, this is all very detailed. None of this really happened.
I think this is the most detailed character's backstory we've ever had.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they made up something for Ina Sharples and Minnie and Martha a little bit, but this is really
This is
detailed.
very flashed out.
It's actually a bit more interesting than what he did
I
on the
think
actual
so.
programme.
This is really fascinating.
Well, this is why I'd really like to see a special Coronation Street episode about a young Albert.
They really could do this quite easily. Because,
I mean, it's too late now, isn't it?
Well, no,
They
because they obviously all of the stuff that's to do with the First World War now is to do with the beginning of the First World War. But I really think it's far more appropriate to celebrate the end of the First World War, which is obviously going to be in another 4 years' time in November. So why they could start doing this?
Or they could have it as the anniversary of this when he went over the tops. They could have it in 2 years' time. I would love them to have a special set in the war Coronation Street episode, and it could be mostly set in the trenches. But then they could have these scenes with the young Ina back in England.
And they've already got all these sets.
Got the sets.
They've got the sets.
They'd have to make it look a bit more cardboard to match how it did back in those days.
It
That'd be brilliant. I don't think Corrie would do it. EastEnders,
I don't think they would.
EastEnders would, and I think they had an episode set in World War II with
Really?
a
I
young
can't believe that.
Dot Cotton. Yeah.
Well, I truly believe that they could do an entire series of spin-off sort of mini dramas based on old characters from Coronation Street, and this would be the perfect way of finding out if people would be interested, and they would be, because it would fit in with all the World War One.
Yeah,
stuff.
I would love.
And
I think
then-
we should start the campaign now.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Back to
the pre-show adventures of Albert Tatlock. Did we say? Yeah, you said he made his first visit to the Rovers in 1919,
Yes.
and then in 1921, his brother Alfred moved in with Albert and Bessie and his new barmaid wife, Edna.
Mm-hmm. But Edna died of scarlet fever along with their daughter Joyce in 1924, and Alfred left. Didn't want to stay with them anymore.
Didn't blame him, they smelled a bit funny.
1929, Albert began to work at a local print works. And then in 1931, Hardcastle's mill closed and Bessie lost her job there because she was still working there, remember? And then they all went through the Great Depression, which hit the family hard. This could be another episode in our Albert drama, couldn't it? The
Yeah.
Great Depression.
But it's more exciting to do the Great Depression in America because they had that funny way of speaking.
They've got a funny way of speaking up in Coronation Street, haven't they? 1933, Bessie gave birth to a daughter, Beattie, but Albert saw little of her as he had to travel to Wigan for employment following the closure of the print works.
Hard times.
Well, there are times back then.
In 1937, he got a job as a clerk in the housing department at the town hall. And in 1945, when we had another war, he was told he was too old to fight. And so became an ARP warden instead,
Yeah.
which, as we all know from Dad's Army, was such a great job.
Who was the? I never watched Dad's Army.
There
really.
was one of the guys there was they didn't really like him, I don't think. He
Yeah,
just goes around telling people off.
Albert wanted to fight, and I think he was like one of these soldiers that was like always had these glorious stories of. Not it wasn't it was like it wasn't about the glory of fighting in
No,
the war
it's the
necessarily.
duty of protecting your country. And like the thing about World War II is that everyone calls it a just war, don't they? And it kind of felt very much like the baddies versus the goodies.
Yeah.
Whereas these days people are a bit less naive and more wary of why we're doing stuff. But so he, despite going through all that, he still wanted to fight, wasn't allowed, and Beattie was evacuated to Blackpool, and she unfortunately was never really close to her parents after that. So I guess BT was the same age as my grandparents then.
Yeah, I guess so.
And yours.
When they were evacuated. Yeah, BT was in Coronation Street in the odd episodes here and there, and it showed that she was never really close to Albert, which is quite sad.
That's quite funny, because that kind of was what happened to my nan, because she got evacuated during the war, and all of her brothers and sisters went to different places, and she got sent off to a church family, and they were quite well to do, because there was an old woman and a daughter, and the daughter was allowed a car, which is quite unusual, because she was going around doing sort of like war business, and they had a big family Bible on a pedestal, and she got given all these lovely clothes, and then when she got home back after the war finished, her mum, my great-grandma, did not like this at all, and accused her of putting on airs and graces and ripped the clothes off her back and burned them all.
They could make a soap opera about that.
I think they could have made a soap opera about both my nans. Like, my granddads both kept their mouths shut. I don't know what happened to them.
But anyway, 1953, BT moved to Oak Hill after getting married, and in 1959, Albert's wife Bessie died in her sleep, and that was like a little precursor to Coronation Street starting in 1960. So when the episodes finally started, after all that happened, and it was just all from the mind of Darren Little et al. But yeah, he was
grumpy
widower
by the time the show finished.
Yeah, well, he turned 65 in 1960, and he drew his pension. So what happened on screen with Albert? Well, in 1961, he had a little fall in his kitchen, and he was told that he needed a carer. BT invited him to stay with her, but he knew that she didn't really want to and declined her offer.
Aww.
Yeah, because she'd grown apart from him.
Yeah, in 1962, he is delighted when Ken marries his niece Valerie, who is much closer to than his own daughter. And he also befriends schoolgirl Susan Schofield when working as a lollipop man, and he confronts her father when she finds he is violent towards her.
So Ken...
Tragically unlikely to ever happen in a similar storyline now, because you can't have...
An old man befriending...
No, you just couldn't. It's really sad.
So... Some people may get confused with whose uncle Albert actually was, because he gets referred to as Uncle Albert by Deirdre and Tracy and Ken, and actually he wasn't any of their uncles at all. He was just the uncle of Ken's first wife Valerie, but because they were kind of so close, he ended up just calling him Uncle Albert.
But I think it's also quite, maybe it's a working class kind of English thing to have your friends, your mum and dad's friends or acquaintances be called uncle.
Oh yeah. I guess I'd call your uncle like uncle as well, even though he's not my uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess so.
That's what happened with that. So in 1965, Albert was pursued by a fellow pensioner, Clara Midgley, who wanted to marry him, but he wasn't interested. He was also fined £5 that year when he knocked off a policeman's helmet when he was drunk, but the locals clubbed together to pay for him.
What he should have done there was to say he needed it for a pregnant woman to wee into, because you're allowed to do that.
Were you allowed to do that in 1965?
I'm sure.
I think that was kind of...
fact.
I think the fact that the locals all clubbed together to pay for that fine showed how...
I would have liked to have
seen... pillar stone of the community he was, and was respected by people.
He was respected even though he knocked off a policeman's helmet because he was drunk.
Yeah.
Everyone liked him, wasn't it?
Everyone liked him.
In 1968, he took a living job as an assistant at the Fusiliers Museum in Bury. And he attracted the attention of Alice Pickens, but he had to escape through the Rover's toilet window to get away from her. She sounds a bit like a Mary.
He really didn't seem to be interested in getting romantically involved with anyone back then, did he?
I think it's one of those things where it's quite comic to have a male character being pursued, because it's sort of like it's always the woman. It's always like the female who is supposed to be more highly prized is like the romantic partner. So it's just funny when a man is pursued in the same.
Well, they had it later on in the 80s, 90s with Phyllis Pierce chasing after Percy Sugden, also a war veteran, although just from the Second World War. So I guess it might have been an earlier version of that.
Yeah. She persists with this, and eventually she has to look after him when he broke his ribs and his arm after he fell off a box at the museum. Yeah,
apparently she went around to the museum to spy on him or to say hello, and he was so surprised to see that he fell off a box.
Well,
the plan worked. She had to look after him, and he eventually warmed to the idea of marrying Alice. Although it is because it would be someone to look after him, so he got quite a cushy deal after he started looking after him. So as the wedding day arrived in 1969, they realised that they didn't actually love each other, and they called the ceremony off.
Alice and Albert, a nice pair of names, aren't they?
Yeah, and Alfred's the brother.
Alfred, Alice and Albert. In 1971, he is devastated when Valerie electrocuted herself, but he
Hairdryer.
remained close to Ken, even though he is not happy when Peter and Susan are sent to Scotland to live. He is critical of Ken's many later conquests, as he feels they do not live up to Val.
Yeah, he liked Deirdre, but Ken went through his big string of girlfriends then, and
Yep,
didn't like that. I think he supported this his second marriage to Janet as well, if I remember rightly. In 1973, Albert became the co-caretaker at the community centre under Ina Sharples, and he and Minnie agreed that year to marry for financial reasons, but Ina talked her out of it.
There are so many marriages of convenience in the past.
Or talking of marriages of convenience.
The only one I can think of that we had recently was Graham and Sheen.
Oh yeah.
Which is obviously like the current version of marriage of convenience, where she was trying to get like a British passport or whatever, but they actually did like each other in the end.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I think they're probably a better relationship than most of the couples that are on the street.
I really like how they built up the relationship, it sounds like, between Albert and Ina and Minnie and Martha over all this time, because I mean they knew each other all their lives, and they were like school friends that grew up together. It was quite nice,
sweet.
really.
I tell you why people were more prone to marriages of convenience back in the old days.
Why?
Because the average cost of a wedding was not £21,000.
Yeah, just go through it, whatever.
Yeah,
Something to do for a Saturday afternoon.
All you have to do is ice the tea cake that you make for Sundays.
So in 1975, there was a street party in Albert's honour to mark his 80th birthday, and all his, as many as possible,
all of them.
members of his old regiment came along too. 1976, Ken moved back in with him. 1980, this is quite funny, Albert sold his military medal to get money to go to London for Remembrance Day, but it's not continuity error, everyone. Ken did buy it back for him when he saw how upset it had made Albert.
So if Ken comes back and this medal is still gone, he's going to be like, I am not buying this goddamn medal for the second time. Someone else can do it.
I wonder what Tracy would say if she knew that he sold it. I think that'd be quite good ammunition for her.
He
would have wanted me to get something good out of it.
Exactly.
1981, he persuaded Ken to stay at number 1 with him when he married Deirdre, and Tracy ended up taking Albert's old room, and he lived in the front parlour.
Well, that's Blanche's domain.
Yes. Well, it seems like it is the old person's domain at number 1, isn't it?
It's the old granny annex.
Yeah.
In 1983, Ken offered to buy number 1 from Albert after reconciling with Deirdre after her affair with Mike.
Yeah.
And in 1984, he died in his sleep. Not Ken. Albert. He died in his sleep while visiting BT.
Well, that was the excuse they made for it on the programme.
Because unfortunately the actor, Jack Howarth, died of kidney failure a few months before. And in his final few months he was kind of not really being able to keep up with the demands of the role, because the characters often had to repeat his lines, and he was getting difficult to understand, which is quite sad.
Yeah.
But he was very old.
There's a few stories of other characters that kind of were kept on going to the very bitter end, didn't they? And it being more and more difficult for them.
Yeah.
I just wonder what it's going to be like for the likes of William Roach and that, because he's saying it's a job for life.
I do wonder what they would do if he insisted and he wasn't up to it.
I don't know what they could do, because they would have to try and convince him, or somebody would.
I don't even want to think about it.
Okay, let's not then.
So anyway, that was Albert Tatlock.
Yeah, so
he was.
It started off nice,
and then he got grumpy.
Got a bit grumpy. It happens to us all, but he was still respected by everybody. Yeah, William Roach said.
Obviously knew him quite well. He said Albert was a slightly gruff, eccentric, little potato-shaped man, and in some ways his character was a forerunner of Blanche, in that they stayed in the same room. No, in that the rest of us would work really hard on a scene, and then Jack would have one line at the end and completely steal it.
I don't remember seeing very much of Uncle Albert at all, so I've got little fondness for him, like I do for some of the other classic Corrie characters. And if he died in 1984, I mean, I must have seen a couple of years worth of episodes of him on classic Coronation Street, but to be honest, he wasn't anyone that stood out for me. But I know that's a bit sacrilege to say, because there'll be lots of listeners, or long-time listeners, I'm sure, that might be really big fans of Albert Tatlock, and I think he's certainly a classic.
They should do a
Coronation
show.
Street
I really
member.
think they should do a show about him.
I'd love to find out more about him in a show.
But the thing is, though, I guess they would they make his personality as it should have been, like a respectable kind of like working class lad out to try to get glory and slowly realise the horrors of war? Or would that completely change his character? Because actually he wanted to go and fight again in World War II and he ended up being a grumpy old git.
I think that they'll show him the way that he was.
They wouldn't be able to capture the what people remembered him as being,
How he
would
was.
they?
No, it would just be because
It would be him in
make
name
it even
only,
easier.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Which
Yeah.
which makes it in many ways easy to do.
But also in many ways fairly pointless.
But they could still have Ina Sharples, and I'm sure she was quite similar. They'd be able to make
Ina
her a
Sharples,
young
what?
battle axe.
Running up the ammunition?
Yeah.
No. Bill Podmore said Jack's colourful character blended in so well with Albert Tatlock's that it would have taken an expert to spot the difference. On the face of it, only Albert's false moustache told them apart. Why
Corrie exclusive. He had a false moustache.
Why Jack didn't just grow one, I never discovered. Perhaps popping a touch of glue on his upper lip was easier than trimming the real thing.
Yeah. There we go.
Maybe he just didn't like having hair growing out of his face. I don't.
And that's our final word on Albert Tatlock. If any of our listeners did watch any of the older episodes and have got some memories of him to share with us, I would love to hear them. Because, yeah, at the moment he's not much of an important character for me, but I recognise his importance to the history of the show, definitely. And I'm sure it would have been a very different programme without him.
Yeah.
So, in the centenary year, we salute you, Albert Tatlock.
And we start our campaign, Resurrect Albert Tatlock, for
what can we do to get this programme made?
Kickstarter.
Yeah.
It sounds like too much work.
It does sound like too much work.
I agree with.
Just talk
I
about
agree.
it on the podcast until it happens.
I agree with Roy's approach. Petition.
Okay.
And by petition, we just mean someone else do it.
Write into the podcast if you want to have an Uncle Albert special when he was in the war, and we'll just send them all off. We'll forward them all together to ITV.
Yeah, and they'll do something about it.
Right, let's go with some Corrie news.
Welcome to our character profile upload of Zeedan Nazir, which was taken originally from episode 199 of Conversation Street, the Coronation Street podcast, with me, Gemma.
And me, Michael.
So you're going to hear us talking about Zeedan as a character from what year was it?
We recorded it back in 2016, which was only a couple of years into of his reign in the show.
Yes.
And I suppose if we'd known back then how little time that the character was going to be in it, we'd have held out for a little bit longer.
Yeah, sorry.
Because it was about halfway through his run that we recorded this. We just finished listening to it ourselves, actually, haven't we? And there's quite a lengthy discussion, considering he'd not been in very many episodes. But
that's because he had a lot of potential for different types of storylines, which you're going to hear us talking about, and you will be able to judge as you're listening to it whether he lived up to that potential or not.
Well, if you come back at the end of listening to the podcast recording, then we'll hopefully have a little bit more to say.
Yes, at the end we'll
so watch this space.
Top it up.
Right, character profile time, and this is the character profile that we planned to do last week, but we didn't because we were too tired. And it is Zeedan. He's not even been in the show.
It's
this
everyone's
week.
favourite Nazir.
Right, but let's try and be positive about Zeedan, because I do actually like Zeedan more than I used to. But I think we should try and be positive
about him.
Because we might go to the gates and meet him there, and if we said we don't like him, then he might not speak to us, and that'd be sad. Zeedan, they haven't decided when he was born yet, according to Corriepedia, because they've got circa 1997 for him.
That's what I put on my birth certificate.
Circa 19...
Yeah, circa 1998.
And, yeah, so he hasn't had a birthday or anything, and it's about time. But his parents, both deceased, Cal and Jamila Nazir, and he has got a sister, Alia, of course. Now, Zeedan made his first appearance at a cricket match, I believe, on the 5th of September 2014, and he has so far been in about 146 episodes, played by Kazim Akhtar, I think it's how you say it. And with a name like Akhtar, then that's your career progression sorted, really, isn't it? Your career path, I mean.
What do you mean?
You've got to be an actor.
Oh, actor. Yeah, okay, I get
That's
it.
my joke. You get
Yeah.
my joke.
I was thinking of Admiral Akbar out of Star Wars. You know, the guy that goes, "It's a trap."
Oh, I've even heard of that quote.
Yeah, it's
So-
a meme.
Yeah, Kazim had been in Shameless before, which was that.
I can't believe he was in Shameless.
We've
No.
never watched Shameless, have we?
No.
It was that program.
don't like the
Was
look
that
of it.
Channel 4 Scally program?
Yeah, it's a bunch of about a bunch of scallies that get into scrapes.
Well, he was playing boozy ladies' man Chesney, which is a little bit different to Zidane's character now.
Tiny little bit.
Now, he came in 2014, so we haven't got very much to talk about for him, but yeah, we are running out of characters now. And in August 2014, Stuart Blackburn had this to say about him, so let's see if he matches up. Zidane is funny.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Because that could be lots of different things.
Zidane is funny, said Stuart Blackburn. He can be flirty and he's a little bit vain, as he's really into his clothes. There's not a dark side to him, but his relationship with Cal is incredibly difficult. Zidane was brought up for most of his life by his mother and his grandparents because his dad was away in the army.
Can I just say one thing before I forget about his clothes? They did try to integrate that a little bit when he was friends with Simon, and Simon was getting the trainers to try to be cool like Zidane, do you remember? And they were talking about clothes and all that together.
But I wouldn't say that this is a defining character trait of Zidane, that he's into his clothes, is he?
Yeah, but okay.
Anyway, he's also said, what Zidane experienced as a young lad was absence, which he's really angry about. His mother died a couple of years back, but when she was alive, Zidane would have seen her sitting staring at the television and sobbing terrified whenever there are reports from Afghanistan. There's a lot of anger in Zidane as he questions why his dad wasn't with him.
I would like to add something here as well.
Go on then.
They completely didn't do anything with that.
They made him angry.
I tell you what, they put a lot of stuff about Afghanistan in with Gary, and I think they were too scared to follow it up with Cal and talking about how it affected Cal's family. Because I think it was too heavy-handed what they did with Gary, and I think they're a bit scared of putting that in again because it was very negative, and I don't really think it's beneficial to anybody to have that in because everyone knows that war is crap, and I don't think that because the thing is, in this country there's a big culture of kind of not as kind of cheesy as it is in America, but kind of like holding the troops up and poppies and everything, and because the royal family are so linked in with the military, because obviously the Queen is like the head of the armed forces, and all of the royal family have been in the war, and a lot of them are involved in charities. Like at the moment, Prince Harry is doing the Invictus Games, which is to do with servicemen and women. So
you've got to be careful what you say.
Like, you can't really push too much criticism of what they do in and try to make it seem like you want them to be heroes. Like the people want them to be portrayed as heroes, but if you start to sort of like concentrate more on the damage that serving does to families and things, it just comes across maybe as a bit too negative.
Well, the thing with Zidane and Cal is they never really had much chance to explore that anyway, because
they were never really together.
Not a huge amount, and then Cal was burnt to a crisp not 6 months after Zidane's reintroduction, and
it wasn't even in Afghanistan.
Yeah, no, exactly. Just in Victoria.
So, I mean, does that go into the statistics? Do you have to wear a poppy for Cal, or does it not count?
We've always been quite critical of Zidane, that he's been so moody and angry and everything, and I do kind of...
if I was an orphan, I'd have a chip on my shoulder.
Now I read this about it and kind of think about his bad upbringing, I kind of understand him a little bit more and sympathise with him.
We'll read the next part of what Stuart says about Zidane.
He said Zidane's culture and religion is also important to him. We'll see him go off for private prayers.
No, we don't.
And that's another point of difference between him and his dad.
No, it wasn't.
There's a lot of years for Cal to make up for, but it won't be easy, as Zidane is a stubborn young man.
In Zidane, we have all of the, like, a recipe for absolute disaster. And there was a rumour going around that there was going to be
Muslim extremism storyline.
And it really isn't difficult to see how Zidane as a character was primed for exactly this storyline. He's got a bit of a...
chip on his shoulder about the army.
He's got a chip on his shoulder about the army. His dad was in Afghanistan. He's an orphan. He's very religious. He's in a country that isn't religious at all. And you've got this other side of him, which is quite vain and materialistic and a bit opposed to the teachings of most religions, which wouldn't be, supportive of flirting and being into clothes and things.
They if he like went down this route of a extremist storyline, it wouldn't be.
It certainly wouldn't be out of nowhere.
And it'd be an incredibly risky move, but it could be done, right? Like, because on Lost, I'm sure we've said this before about him, when they had the whole Saeed was kind of press gang, or he was peer pressure, I suppose, got him involved with those terrorists, and yet you still were able to somehow sympathise with this character.
I read a really interesting article about, I think it was a Danish teenager who was talking about how she was basically almost recruited by ISIS, and they just kind of like they insert themselves as your friend, and then they drive a wedge between you and your family, and then they kind of shepherd you closer towards your religion and make it, pick out the bits that you're going to really resonate with you, and kind of like say, oh, look, everybody in the society, look at them, how they hate you, and come with us because we're the only ones that understand you. That kind of like teenage rebellion and longing to be part of something different.
I think it'd be really interesting to see that on Coronation Street, but it'd be so risky, and they'd have to get it absolutely perfect. And
to be fair, they haven't in the past handled things like this well enough to be able to take it on. But they've got a new producer.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Kate Oakes would.
And it makes me wonder,
take the risk,
whether Stuart Blackburn did bring Zeedan in specifically for a storyline like this, and then chicken out or get told, no, you're not doing this.
I know, I do wonder, especially when he's saying here that his culture and religion is important to him. We go and see him go off to private prayers. I don't think we've ever had that, and there's not been any mention of a prayer room at the gym.
We've only ever seen them in the mosque at Carl's funeral.
Yeah,
and even then they didn't explain anything. They just had Leanne up with the women, and you didn't even realise that actually in mosques there is a separate area for the women, and they're not allowed to pray in the same room as the rest of the men. They didn't even have that.
They've also had they like to have Eid, don't they?
Yeah, I wonder why. I mean, I feel like it's a wasted opportunity, and I wonder whether they were planning something, and then, because the trouble is, there's always some kind of terrorism happening in Europe or in the UK. That means it's not now a good time for us to pursue this storyline, and I think maybe they're worried about that. Can you imagine the absolute PR nightmare there would be?
They got into a
if
storyline,
they were starting a storyline like that, and then suddenly there was a bomb in London and loads of people died, and then you've got Zeedan and them trying to do a really interesting story where they take a balance of both sides and they see, why does this character get drawn to this? Or, I mean, it could even be one of Zeedan's friends who he's watching spiralling into this kind of horrible, anything sympathetic towards terrorism would absolutely be a complete no-no. There would be people even when they did the Hope cancer storyline, you had people saying, my daughter, my son had this, and I think that Coronation Street portrayed it in a really stupid way, and I'm disappointed with the way they covered this. Do you remember?
I do remember, but sometimes you got to take it. People criticise storylines for whatever reason, really, wouldn't they?
I know, but come on, Michael, there's a big difference between getting people in the Sun going, oh, Corrie's storyline broke my heart after my son was bombed by terrorist thugs, versus I didn't like the Hindu storyline because my son's a policeman, and I don't think he gets confused with strippers all the time.
So how come they can do it with, like, you have Homeland or whatever, and that's
because it's American.
Ambiguous. Right. Anyway,
and also people. There's this not narrower audience, and it's a lot more mature audience. Coronation Street is for everybody. Coronation Street is for people that read The Guardian, read The Independent, people that read The Sun, and people that read The Daily Mail. All these people with all different opinions and ideas in their heads about what exactly a Muslim terrorist is. You've got people that are going to be sympathetic to a storyline like that, and you've got people that are going to be, because there's no way they can get it right. They're either going to do a let's completely trash this character and make him into an unsympathetic terrorist, and then you're going to have all of the people who are Muslim saying, I can't believe you've done this to us. You've set us back again. All we're trying to do is live in peace with everybody, and you have to do a storyline like this and make us all look like terrorists. And if they do a sympathetic one, you're going to get people coming out going, why are you making out that ISIS are all friendly little misunderstood teenage people that just orphans and are just really sad when they're beheading people and drowning them in swimming pools?
I wonder whether any other soaps, I mean, as far as we know, there might be other soaps that have had these storylines.
Yeah, we don't know. We're quite sheltered, aren't we?
Yeah. They might have had them in all the other soaps, and Coronation Street's the only one that hasn't got the guts to do it.
No, Coronation Street's like, why would we do the terrorist storyline? Everyone's done a terrorist storyline. We're doing a Hendy storyline.
Never been done before.
They get arrested.
Somebody arrested at a Hendy. Right, let's run down what has Zeedan done since he's got here. Well,
in 2014, his family was introduced because
he was the last one to arrive, wasn't he?
Cal had been in the show actually since 2013.
Yeah, he came at the end of the 2013.
And Alia appears in June of 2014, and they are always talking about him and saying...
We wondered what was going on with him, weren't we?
We don't get a great first impression of him, really, because they're just talking about how he's always on his phone.
Yeah, and we kind of imagined him being a bit younger than he turned out to be as well, weren't we?
Yeah, he's a moody teenager when he arrives.
And this was the time as well when Leanne and Cal were starting dating or whatever, and we hear that Zeedan doesn't like the idea of this because he thinks that Cal is dishonouring his mum, who just died a few years ago or whatever. And so...
well, Jamila had only died, according to the show, in 2012. And I kind of imagined it to have happened a lot longer ago than it actually did.
I don't know, really. I don't know. I thought that sounded about right to me. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So Zeedan finally turns up at this cricket match when the Rovers was going against the Flying Horse or the Weather Yards or something.
Who can forget that day?
Classic day that was.
I have to say, I don't think I'll forget that for a long time, that episode.
Steve wants Zeedan to join the team, but he storms off the pitch because Alia has invited Leanne along.
Zeedan hates Leanne. That is one of the defining
he did back then
elements of his personality, and you would think that would endear him to me, but it didn't.
So he got a job at the builder's yard, but then Cal kicked up a fuss because it turned out that Zeedan wasn't even earning minimum wage. I think it was this Tony he was working for, I can't remember. Anyway, Zeedan was furious about Cal's meddling, and then
Cal was being a bit of a tiger mum here, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean he was
being a bit snobby. He was like, this is too good for you.
I think it was also a case of like he know that he's been a bad dad really because he's been away up to this point, and he was trying to support his son, and Zeedan's like, I've grown out of this now, I can't have you running around me. So he's also later on that year unhappy to find out that Alia has started seeing Gary. I think they try and keep their relationship secret for a bit, if I remember rightly. He's eventually run one round, but he's always been incredibly protective, overprotective. We've said in the past of his sister.
Found this weird relationship between Gary, Alia and Cal a bit awkward because Gary and Cal kind of viewed each other as kind of equals and mates on the same kind of scene. I mean, I think that Cal was in charge of Gary, wasn't he?
Was he?
In the army. I don't remember. But it's like weird because Cal is obviously old enough to be Alia's dad, but her boyfriend, who is Cal's friend, is not. It just really did my head in.
It was a bit weird.
It is a bit weird to have your boyfriend be your dad's friend.
Yes, that would, yeah.
That's what it boils down to.
That's what happens when you're a soap and you've got a very small pool of people that you can go out
Potential love matches.
So 2015, he became
catching up already. That's right.
Yeah, not much to talk about here. So he got involved in that bizarre egg planting storyline when Sharif's chickens wouldn't lay, and Zeedan and who was it doing with him? Oh yeah, it was, wasn't it? They both decided to put eggs in the.
They were buying eggs,
and
I don't know why Sharif didn't notice. They all had lion stamps.
No, they didn't. You got them from the farmers market, didn't they? Tragedy struck just over a year ago. No, just under a year ago, when Cal was killed in the Victoria Court fire, and Zeedan and Alia were left orphaned. Now Zeedan immediately blames Leanne for this because
it was her fault.
Yeah, well.
Cal, before you come down that ladder,
let me just
I want to tell you something.
I will marry you.
Listen carefully to what I'm going to say to you. Don't come down the ladder yet.
You're really blown up too late.
Cal, I think he's died.
He was like, he wouldn't have been there.
Will the ring melt? What kind of metal was it?
They
he blames her initially, but before long, they're kind of friends again. They start to
Why?
mellow towards each other, didn't they?
Well, at the moment,
Because he finds out that she and Cal were engaged, and I think he
I don't
realised,
care.
you must
Anyway,
have loved each other.
I don't care. It seems like now Leanne and Zeedan are close. They got a bit closer than they are now during 2015, because he was supporting Leanne when Simon was hitting her, which apparently is over and done with now. Never
Apparently.
speak of it again.
I've got a feeling it's going to come back again.
He moves in to keep an eye on her, and then Simon and him bond together, and he kind of almost seems a bit protective, and it got a bit weird.
Well, it's like with Alia, isn't it? When he said he was policing who Alia can see, and then he just decides, I'm going to move in with you, Leanne, and be your personal
because
bodyguard.
although you are a woman and you are older than me, I am above you because I'm a man.
I'm sure we were talking back then about whether they were leading to some kind of potential relationship
This is
between
what
Leanne
I
and
said when
Zeedan.
it got a bit
Very
weird.
glad.
It got
Very glad
very
it didn't.
weird. Because Simon and Zeedan's relationship was also a bit weird, because it was kind of like, is it this father-son? Is this friends? Is Simon got a little bit of a crush on Zeedan
Yeah, boy crush.
in the most
romance crush.
Yeah, in the most non-sexual way.
He
But
did kind of
seem
idolise him a bit, didn't
he? He really took a shine to Zeedan, and he was always trying to impress him. And it just got, the whole relationships between those three characters was just like, I can't label this, and so it makes me uncomfortable.
So later that year, he discovered that Jason had had a one-night stand with Alia, gets rather annoyed by this news, threatens to push him over the builder's yard balcony over where Tina went. He told Alia he was disgusted with her behaviour and was ashamed of her, but then they made up. So,
That's fine. then.
good for that. Now, at the end of the year, he had a bizarre career change, didn't he? He decided...
Well, he had inherited the gym from Cal, and then he decided it was too much work.
Yeah, that was one of these, like, 1 minute he seemed fine working there, and the next minute it's like, I can't cope with the pressure of owning a gym. And so now I can cook, by the way. And
I tell you what, it would be really nice to pursue, and this is what really kind of annoys me about all of these pampered rich kids that have suddenly appeared on the street, which is Alia, Kate, Aidan, and Zeedan, to me, are all pampered rich kids. And it must be really nice to kind of have the room and time and no pressure to pursue whatever job it is that you would like to have, with no expectations of earning money out of it.
And you're lucky when you're on the street, because there's always a job opening whenever you happen to decide you want to have a career change.
Yeah,
I'm
'cause I
bored of
mean-
this job. Oh, there's one.
Oh, I want that one, I'll do. I mean, working as a sous chef is really not very well paid, but obviously with working as a chef in general, the sky's the limit to how much money you can earn.
When he became a chef, I was very like,
Why?
where has this come from? But actually, I think I prefer him working at the bistro. I accept
can
that
I
now.
just say, this is another example of them skirting around the issue of he is a Muslim, because he works in a place that sells alcohol, and a lot of Muslims don't sell. Some of them do, and some of them don't. And some, for example, some Muslim people. Workers in places like Asda and stuff won't sell alcohol because they don't have to.
Zeedan
because that's
doesn't-
part of their religion.
Zeedan doesn't drink, does he?
He doesn't drink. He doesn't mind Rana drinking. He probably does. He doesn't like Alia drinking. But I want to know: does he cook with alcohol? Because he probably has to. Would he eat it if that was in it? Does he ever cook pork? Does he ever cook bacon? They never speak about these things, but it would come up in his job. Would he make an exception for it, or is Robert change the menu so there are no pork products or alcohol on the menu?
Or maybe Robert's
remember
the one
when
that
we
cooks that.
When we went to Brick Lane in London the other day, when we went into the restaurant and we sat down, it's an Indian restaurant, and they said to us, if you want any alcohol, let us know, we'll give you a token and you'll go to the shop, the off license. And we were like, what does that mean? And I looked it up, and it said that on Brick Lane a lot of the businesses are owned by Muslims who don't sell alcohol, and so they have arrangements with local off licenses and stuff, so that they don't have to keep it on their premises, but they can still get money from selling it.
That would have been quite interesting if they'd had that, and it does go to show that they're trying.
It
You
seems
partly
to
think that
me-
they're trying to edge him away from being a religious
can I just
character, and
say-
then unless he feels like it, in which case he's
that's
very
like,
Muslim.
But that's like anyone though. Anyone's like hypocritical. But
Yeah,
it seems
fair
to
weather
me
Muslim.
like they're scared of even mentioning it as though mentioning it is a criticism. But actually, you shouldn't be scared of saying that he believes this or he does that. It shouldn't be like a blanket criticism of somebody that they don't eat pork or they don't drink alcohol. It's just a fact of his life that is his religion and he doesn't do it. So can we not skirt around it? Can we actually
bring it up?
What's he going to do in Ramadan? Is he going to be cooking in there all day long? He's going to be hot. He's going to be on his feet all day long. He's going to be doing a physical job. How is he going to cope without being able to... I mean, obviously, hundreds, thousands and millions of Muslims do this all the time, so it's no big deal, but it's going to be an interesting struggle for his character to have to do this.
I hope so.
But they won't... Will they mention it, or are they scared?
I don't know.
I feel like they think it's a can of worms and they're scared of opening it
they like to prod it every now and again.
They like to go around it and sort of like go, what do you think? Do you like this or not? Is there gonna be an article in the Sun tomorrow criticising us about this? Or the Daily Mail?
Well, I don't know.
Right, so
I haven't got as much to say about this as you.
Well, it's late and I get more opinionated the later time goes.
Yeah.
And it was a deadline week.
I get tireder.
It's a deadline week, which means I'm crazy with no sleep.
What I have to say about this is that I was initially sceptical of Zeedan suddenly being a super chef. Now I'm quite interested that he's there because I like having the Nazirs spread around. And as much as I like the idea of the gym when it first came, I'm a bit bored of gym scenes now. I'm no fan of the bistro either.
We got really excited about two things to do with the Nazirs. One was the gym appearing, and number two was the fact that Alia was some kind of fashion guru who
she was going to steal the factory away, wasn't she?
She had designs to get the factory off of Carla, and she also had a background in studying fashion at university, and she also was developing this side business to do online sales.
Yeah.
And where did that go? Nowhere.
But anyway, I will accept Zeedan being a chef now. I'm fine with it. His character is still young enough that you can make these little odd tweaks to it.
I just think they're just staring a storyline in the face of
not going down there.
There are conflicts to do with his religion that might come up in this storyline, and is he going to compromise his religion, or is he going to stick to his principles and say, even though this is what you want me to do, I'm not going to do it. I just feel like I would tackle this if I was in charge of Corrie.
Well, maybe Kate Oakes thinks the same as you. We'll have to see.
Maybe I am Kate Oakes.
That'd be amazing. 2016, let's just see what Zeedan's been doing this year. Well, he has fancied Rana, who's Alia's university pal, but she seems to have been around the block a few times.
I don't get this relationship between Rana and Zeedan, because everything Rana does is what Zeedan criticised Alia for doing that time. When she got drunk and slept with Jason, it was the end of Zeedan's world, as far as I could tell. He was disgusted. And then you get him crushing on Rana, who is probably the most worldly woman in the show. She drinks, she's got these boyfriends that she's obviously slept with. She takes him to the cupboard to have a snog, and it feels like it's going to go a bit further.
There was that older guy, wasn't there? The Rana's ex
Rana's ex who looked like some kind of weird
Playboy
rich guy who had a bodyguard and a personal assistant with him. Hope that
there's some untapped history there for Rana. Are they split up probably by the end, though, didn't they? Because he was too uncomfortable with her lifestyle and everything, and she wanted to go to bed with him, but he wouldn't.
He doesn't. Yeah, he says you're too special for that. He doesn't say I'm sorry, but it's against my religion. He says you're too special. What we've got together, I don't want. To me, you're too special for me to dishonour you like that. But he doesn't come out and say it's against my religion, and I don't see why he doesn't.
No, it'd be interesting to see them have a bit of a heart-to-heart.
I guess it's kind of, he doesn't need to spell it out for her, but for the viewers it should be a bit more obvious, because everybody knows that's why he thinks it.
So, and all in all, with Zeedan, then he seems to be the character that we can have the most discussion about, the one that's the most to say about. Would you say he is the most interesting Nazir at this point? I still prefer Yasmin to watch. She's the most entertaining, but I think Zeedan has got the potential to be the most interesting one.
He's the most complex one, which is interesting because he's had a lot less conflict with his religion than Alia has. Because Alia had that big religious...
Yeah, when she slept with Jason.
Kind of what am I thinking of? The word
Crisis of faith.
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
thing.
Where she did exactly what she never wanted to do, and she's just kind of like gone where doesn't matter anymore. But I feel like there's a potential for Zeedan, but it's disappointing in a way because I feel like it's never going to be realised.
Yeah, it's always going to be. Maybe it's a bit too far, but it does kind of make him more interesting because than some of the other nice guys. Because there's quite a few nice guys on the street of his age. There's Gary,
Luke.
there's Luke, there's Andy, and all of them are a little bit dull.
Too
They're kind of
nice.
nice, aren't they? But
Well, I mean,
they're also a
even
little bit
someone like
bland.
Andy, who had such a nefarious beginning, is now the most likeable sort of, I'd take him home to my mum any day bloke on the street. Zeedan has always got a bit of a kind of, don't know, darkness about him.
Yeah, which makes him more interesting
An
than those guys.
internal
Even
conflict where you can tell that he's got so many conflicting thoughts in his brain.
I think if the likes of Gary and Luke and Andy left Coronation Street, I'd be like, meh, oh well. If Zeedan left, I'd be like, oh, that's a bit of a missed potential. I'd probably be like, oh well, I'll get over it, but I'd feel there was missed potential. But if some of the other the nice guys went, Tyrone's a nice guy, and I would be devastated if he left because, you know, of his history in the street and everything. But yeah, I'm surprised how much in my head I've turned around against Zeedan, because it always used to be whenever he was on the screen, be like, no, get him off, don't like him, not interested in him at all. But I am more now, and I like him now, and I understand why he's angry now that I'm looking more into his past.
Didn't you say that the actor got in trouble about the portrayal of the character that he played in Shameless?
Yeah, he did actually.
Because he was kind of like a
He was the
very
boozy ladies'
worldly, not very good Muslim, and the actor himself is Muslim.
Yeah.
And he said, it doesn't bring any shame upon me as a person what my character's doing.
That's my character.
Because there was a lot of people complaining and saying that he wasn't a good example of what a Muslim should be like, and he was like, well, no, it's a character, it's not. So he obviously doesn't shy away from these kinds of things.
No, so it makes you wonder whether he would say anything to...
Well, it makes you wonder whether they hired him for that reason and said, look, this guy's done that stuff before.
Yeah.
He can handle this, let's hire him because we've got these storylines in our minds.
Yeah.
And then they brought him in and they went, oh, I don't know now.
It'd be very interesting to see what Kate does with him, because, I mean, the Nazirs are Stuart Blackburn's family, aren't they? And there was a huge risk that when new producer comes in, she's like, right, I'm going to make my mark, I'm going to cut the apron strings, I'm going to pull away from Stuart Blackburn and get rid of his family. So what can I do with them? If there's nothing big that I can do with them, they could be on the chopping block.
I hope they don't get rid of the Nazirs.
So do I.
For many reasons. Number one, I like most of them. Even Sharif, who is kind of like the most bland guy.
I don't dislike it. There's none of them that I really dislike, which is a change from a year ago.
Yeah. I like, well, they've got the community centre that they're involved with, so they've got a bit of an anchor there.
In the gym.
I also think it's super important that we've got a family on the street who is Muslim, and it shows the actual demographics of this country. And if they got rid of them, who are they left with? It's a bit shameful as far as I'm concerned. This is the first family that we've got in there who's been a Muslim family. You've got, I mean, probably a lot of people watching it think that Dev's Muslim, but he's Hindu.
Yeah, I think they should keep them. They need to keep a family and try with them, because they've had so many families move into that house over the year.
the cursed
house. And then got rid of them for a few years because they haven't quite clicked. I think that the Nazirs are good enough, and if they keep hold of them and develop them more,
especially
rather than just get rid of them.
Especially with this newfound rivalry that
with Yasmin and Sally
that we always wanted to happen, and it's taken this long.
Where's the orangery?
Where's the damn orangery?
Yeah, that's what I want to say.
But I mean, amongst the Nazirs,
I think that Sally should get back from Blackpool, and then there's just finds this orangery next door.
Yeah.
And Yasmin said, "Well, I called round to see if you would object. Would you want in?" So I just went ahead.
I mean, when Zeedan first came in, I would have ranked them all and said
I'd have put him at the bottom.
But now he's probably my second favourite.
Yeah, after Yasmin.
So it would go Yasmin, Zeedan, Sharif, and then Alia, because I don't like Alia at all anymore.
Not at the moment. Yeah, Sharif's one that I'm just not fussed about. He I could take him or leave him, but Alia is not. Yeah.
Alia's bland. Alia's pointless at the moment.
She is. She's not really done
If
much for so
she didn't
long.
put her in it, I wouldn't notice. And I mean, also in the factory, she's almost entirely replaceable by Kate.
Yeah.
I mean, how many sort of young, long, black-haired, I'm into fashion and trendy, and I work at the factory because of nepotism characters you need. The only reason that Alia is still there is because Carla feels guilty about her dad dying.
I concur with your ranking.
Good.
So well done, Suzanne. You're working your way up. Good
Zeedan
job.
is doing a good job because I absolutely hated him so much for a long time.
Yeah, they built him up as a character that was going to be horrible. He came in and he was horrible.
And it was that, the
he's
writing
nicer now. I mean,
I don't think he's nice. I just think he's complicated, and I feel the same way about him as I did about Owen.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of rage
Younger.
inside him.
Younger Owen.
And I think also in Zeedan, there's a bit of misogyny there as well that I don't think he really realises
No,
is
I
there.
don't think so. He thinks he's doing the right thing.
He feels like it's his job to tell women what to do, and he's the moral police of people that are in his friendship or family group,
Which we haven't seen much of his friendship group, have we? Have we ever met any of Zidane's friends?
Well,
I don't know whether...
I think we'll find we've met one of them quite well. Simon, his Bessie mate.
Have you met any friends of his own age? I mean,
I don't
I
know
would be
if we've ever
interested
seen
to
any
see
of his
what his
friends.
friendship group is like, and whether he hangs around with other Muslims or whether he hangs around with white people or Christians or whatever. And he's
I mean, we've never seen him go to the mosque,
no.
and we've never seen him pray.
Right, I think we should draw this discussion to a close. Quite interesting, but
I wonder what other people think.
yeah, it would be interesting to know.
What do you think about Zeedan, and what do you think about...
What's his potential? What do you think about his religion and the lack
What do you
of
think?
pushing it
Do you-
on the show
are
when
you-
he came in as a character that was supposed to
I think a lot of
champion?
people probably would say, I'm glad they don't go on about it, because I feel like it should be treated the same way that, like, Sophie's Christianity is treated. You don't ever really see her praying, and it's not a big thing. Even Billy...
Yeah.
He doesn't go on about God all the time.
No. Yeah, so let us know what you think. If you've got ideas.
Blah, blah, blah. I'll shut up now.
You shut up now.
And there we go. That was our Zeedan character profile from episode 199.
It's like
And,
a little mosquito trapped in amber. It's like a snapshot of a past era.
Yeah, interesting talking about like what's potential he might have, what Kate Oates might want to do with the character. Although
and it is Kate Oates and not Kate Oakes.
That was back in a time when we couldn't remember whether it was Kate Oates or Kate Oakes, and we used them both interchangeably.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But yeah, from Wild Oaks, acorns of Zeedan did not grow, because I still don't think that he really lived up to the potential that he had. Although I was interested hearing and remembering how much we despised the character when he first came into it and grew to like him. And I think looking back on him, I do think he was all right in the end. It was also interesting hearing what we said about, I hope they keep the Nazirs on, hope they don't waste the potential, when currently there's only Yasmin and Alia left in the programme. And I said, if Zeedan did ever end up leaving, I wouldn't be heartbroken, but I'd just end up saying that was a bit of a waste. And looking back on it now, because it's been a couple of years since he has left, that is what I think, really.
Yeah.
He could have stayed in the show and been quite an interesting, well-developed, deep, surly kind of character. But it just kind of whimpered out in the end, didn't
It
it?
feels a bit annoying because people like Zeedan exist in real life. People who are young people who have a very rigid moral framework that they work from, but you would never believe that from watching Coronation Street, because every single young character, even if they get introduced as somebody who's a bit different from the norm, like Sinead, I don't drink, like we had Alina, she was very reluctant to start a relationship with Seb because of her circumstances, but as soon as they kind of establish themselves in the show, they just get made into this mould of the same kind of moral compass, whereas Zeedan kind of did maintain that very rigid sense of right and wrong.
He did get drunk, I remember, one time.
I know,
he had lots of hardships, bless him, to go through in his final few years. All the way through his time on the street, really. No wonder he wanted to get away from Weatherfield, move to Spain.
It's a rite of passage that any religious character will have their faith tested and fail, like Billy did.
Yes.
And
And it's also interesting that the only thing really that remains of Zeedan on the street now is Speed Daal, and that legacy that he created of having a Muslim restaurant that doesn't serve alcohol is being trashed as we speak by Jeff, who is introducing alcohol to the restaurant just to get at Yasmin.
Yeah, it seems that as the years go on, he's just getting more and more erased. So it's interesting to have him brought up recently. I mean, we're releasing this character profile this week because it's his wedding, obviously, coming up.
In April 2020.
Exactly. But I mean, once this is over and done with, I kind of think they might not even need to mention him again. Although I'd be interested to know what his reaction would have been to the Yasmin and Jeff storyline had he stuck around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, so let's talk about what happened to him after we finished off the character profile that we just did. Left him in 2016. From there.
Well, he is getting married to Rana, really, wasn't it?
He married Rana in a Islamic ceremony.
Yeah, he had the nikah ceremony in November, I think, 16, and then a year later,
they had the legal ceremony because they still don't allow, stupidly, different religions that aren't Christian. Which is it? Just Christian?
I can't remember. We've talked about it.
Yeah, we have spoken about it, but it's not automatically you're not legally married at the end of it like you would be if you got married in a Christian faith church.
But we talked in that character profile then about the potential for kind of clashes between Rana and Zeedan because of him being a lot more devout in his religion, whereas she was, fair weather Muslim.
I think,
and they never really delved into that, did they?
I think it's a good thing to cover because when you're outside of a religion, it's very difficult. It's very easy to go, well, you don't follow all the rules, so you're not really a real whatever. But whereas when you're in that religion, many Christians don't follow all of the rules properly, and they would even argue amongst themselves about which rules that you're supposed to follow and which you aren't. So it was very realistic to me, I thought, the way that all the Nazirs and Rana have different interpretations of how far they're willing to go or what they're willing to do. So like we have Yasmin, who when she started in the show, she wouldn't drink any alcohol at all. And then she started drinking glasses of red wine to calm down, and now she is back to not drinking at all, but only because she's being abused by her husband.
With the whole religious side of things as well, we were complaining a little bit in that character profile that they'd kind of skirted around a lot of the Muslim issues, but I was glad at least in Zeedan's final years we did get to see a little bit more of Islam, because we learnt about Muslim weddings. We saw a little bit of turmoil from Rana when she was obviously having these feelings towards Kate, and she wanted to split up with Zeedan, so she went to see the Imam, for example. So that was all kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And Rana's funeral, of course, as well. But there was still... It didn't feel like the show was fully committed to having and showing the full ramifications of what an Islamic family.
It was still better than it had been.
Yeah,
by a lot.
Although equally, when Rana and Kate's relationship came out, they didn't go too far into saying you're not allowed to do this because it's against the Quran. It was a lot more about, well, what will your family think about it?
It was like the culture, the community. A lot of things were blamed on the community, as though that was completely separate from religion and had no influence on it, when we know that the community was their only real consideration was, are you being a good Muslim according to the way that we view the rules? So he got married to Rana, and then, as you just mentioned, Rana began a relationship with Kate, and Zeedan found out eventually, because they were snogging on the sofa when Rana had a cold.
It was supposed to be
really horrible. So she's snotting all over each other.
Whatever turns you on.
So he finds out about this, and Rana's parents also find out, and Rana's parents are by far the most strict Muslims that we've ever seen in the show.
Yeah, especially Hassan, her dad.
Yeah. They bribe the couple to stay together because the community, they don't want them to rush into a divorce. It will mean they lose face to their peers, so they want them to stay married for a certain amount of time, and don't want anything to come out about Rana's relationship. So they bribe Zeedan to keep his mouth shut, because he obviously, being a devout person and also being a normal human being, is thinking, I want out of this relationship immediately if my wife is fancying somebody else. And so he agrees to this deal, which is that they're going to give him money for speed dial.
Yeah.
To open speed dial, because at this point he was running it as a van, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Speed dial was a van, which Rana and Kate ended up shagging in the back of, as I remember.
Almost, I think. They were
almost
caught.
did. They had the bras on, so it didn't count. So he wanted to convert that into a restaurant. They fund it. Eventually, it all falls apart because the love that cannot be contained, even through monetary deals. And then what happens then?
He just kind of, in the end, goes
He just
off.
goes, well, I
don't
give up
really
then.
blame him, because because Rana just she couldn't leave Kate. It was clear that she had feelings for her and that she wasn't going to give her up.
Yeah.
And who wants to stick around their wife while she's
Having it off with someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
So
he ends up beating somebody up, I think, in his final week, who's trying to attack Rana, and he thinks he's killed him, but luckily this guy survives. But that makes him take stock of the situation and realises that he can't stay in Weatherfield anymore, and wants to start a new life. I think in London he goes to.
Well, he goes all over the place, doesn't he? Because he didn't come back for Rana's funeral.
No, he couldn't make it.
That's because he was in...
Was it? He was
in Cannes.
backpacking
He was
or
in
something,
Cannes. So
wasn't
he's in Cannes. So we know that he went to London. Then at some point he's moved to France. And then since then he's moved to Spain, which is where he is at the moment.
What a jet setter.
He's taking advantage of that EU citizenship while he can. So he's in Spain. He's found the love of his life for the second time.
Second time lucky.
Charm. And he has apparently given up on family values and caring about the other Nazirs, because he's not even that bothered.
No, whenever
whether
Alia's
anybody
saying,
comes.
look, our gran has married this guy. He's controlling her. She's not believing anything I say. Please come back and help me. And he's like,
Nah.
I'm in Spain.
But also, he's not even really...
hot birds, and I got to keep my eye on this one because I don't want to go off becoming a lesbian behind my back like happened to the last one.
Also, he's not that bothered whether Alia or Yasmin come to the wedding.
No, I know.
It's like, oh, you've invited yourself, did you? Well, I guess I'm not going to uninvite you, but you weren't actually welcome.
Oh, well, it does fit in with his surly, moody persona.
The actor himself, Kazim Akhtar, has said that he wanted to move on to do other projects. He said he was going to be in the show for 3 years, didn't he? Then move on and do something a bit longer than that. So
it's a shame. I would welcome him back. I think. I don't know whether, obviously, I don't know whether he's been quite down on the down low. I haven't seen what Kazim's been up to in the last couple of years. But I would certainly welcome him back, because, as we said, he's really got potential, that character. And he's also, so in a time when so many Coronation Street characters are being, dumbed down or goofed up or, just made to be a bit silly and comic relief, I think Zeedan was the sort of person who was, straight up serious. I don't think he could be made, he couldn't be infantilized or imbecilized or whatever the right word is. And sometimes you need just a stoic, serious kind of chap to balance out the Steve McDonalds of this world and Brian Packens and so on.
Yes, it's nice to have. It was nice to have him there, and I think he would be welcome back. And the nice thing is that we always thought that the Nazirs were a great family to have on the show, and the more they get whittled down, the more worrying it becomes as to whether they're going to stay the distance. I really think that this current storyline with Jeff and Yasmin shows that they are committed to keeping this family in the spotlight, which is nice. And Alia's always doing something, whether or not I think she's doing a good job of it.
Well, I can certainly see, once the storyline's out of the way, Yasmin taking a backseat for a long time. And
that's what normally happens, though, just
exactly.
to be clear.
They go round in the rotation, don't they? We'd moan for a long time that Yasmin wasn't getting a proper storyline, and she certainly is now, so I wouldn't be surprised if she disappeared off screen for a bit. But I do hope they keep them in, and I wouldn't be bothered if they got rid of Alia. Can we just swap Zeedan for Alia, please? That'd be the ideal situation for me.
Yeah.
Although Alia's actions in recent months in this Jeff storyline have certainly made me warm to the character a little bit more. She gets to use her powers of condescension for good, I suppose.
Yeah, for once. It's handy, isn't it?
Yeah.
The door is open somewhat for Zeedan to come back. It's not like he needs... The thing is, he doesn't need Rana and Kate to come back.
No.
He needs the Nazirs to come back, and they're still there.
Yeah.
So-
Well, they're still there. They're keeping the street warm for him. Although how
fires
it will
burning.
compare to Cannes, Spain, I don't know how warm Weatherfield really is, but can only hope.
Well, it's nice weather at the moment, at least.
It's sunny outside
Spoke too soon,
right
I'm
now,
just gonna
Zeedan.
press-
Come on, go
I'm
and
just
get
gonna
married
touch
over
wood.
here.
Right.
Right. Hope you all enjoyed listening to our character profile there of Zeedan. It got quite heavy at times, I think. And if anyone's got anything that they'd like to say
sorry.
about
I
it,
was such a windbag in that.
oh, don't worry, we're all used to that. If anyone's got any of their own comments to add or any final thoughts on Zeedan, do write in and let us know. But for
Yes.
now, we'll leave it there. Thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you.